Important. Sorry, start again. Sorry.
Now, hold on now.
I didn't know it was Savannah. Go
Now,
on.
this is Savannah Sweeney. You know Savannah Sweeney?
I didn't realise it.
Now, she is 15 today, and this comes in from Dad and Mum, Sienna, Joshua, and not forgetting Granny.
There you go.
Now, that was very important.
Yes, of course. I thought it was something so far more
What?
trivial.
It's all
Okay.
very important stuff.
Happy birthday, Savannah. Okay, Gooch, have a great
You too.
whatever day of the week it is. Have
Thursday.
a clue. Is it?
Friday Eve.
Okay. It's the 9 till noon show on the way after the news at 9:15 with Michaela Clark.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning. A Donegal woman has been selected to read at the funeral of former Pope Benedict XVI today. Thousands of mourners are expected in the Vatican for the funeral mass. The 95-year-old former Pope will be laid to rest following his death on New Year's Eve. He's expected to be given a funeral similar to that for a reigning Pope, despite resigning from the role in 2013, although official delegations have been limited to Italy and his native Germany. Rector of Knox Shrine, Father Richard Gibbons, says it will be watched by millions.
All Catholics around the world will be tuned into the Requiem Mass itself in St. Peter's Square, which is absolutely extraordinary in terms of a reigning pontiff presiding over a retired pontiff's Mass.
5 teenagers who were arrested in Omagh after failing to stop for Garda in Donegal are due to appear in court today. They were arrested after white Toyota Aqua car failed to stop for Garda at Lifford Bridge in the early hours of yesterday morning. One 16-year-old has been charged with a number of offences, including aggravated vehicle taking, driving while unfit, dangerous driving, going equipped for theft and driving without a licence. The other 4 teenagers have been charged and will also appear at Strabane Magistrates Court later today. Donegal is bearing the burden of industrial wind. That's according to one of the founding members of the Guibara Conservation Group. The county is home to over 300 turbines. A public meeting is due to take place on Saturday in Letchermack Ward Hall to discuss concerns over proposed wind farm developments in West Donegal. Patricia Sharkey believes the distribution of wind turbines in Ireland is disproportional.
Just ourselves in North Kerry that are bearing the burden of this industrial wind for the whole country. So we would like to see other counties play their part. And when other counties have got as many turbines as Donegal has, then let them come back and we'll discuss it. But why should a small county like Donegal bear the environmental burden?
A Garda investigation has been launched after bags of excrement were allegedly thrown at 2 politicians at a meeting in Galway last night. Minister of State for Disability Anne Rabbitte and Fine Gael TD Kieran Cannon tweeted about the incident, which occurred at a public meeting. Gardaí say they are investigating all the circumstances relating to the incident. Weather now windy today with strong southwest winds, mostly cloudy with outbreaks of rain and highest temperatures of 9 or 10 degrees. That's all from Highland Radio News for now. We'll be back with news again at 10 o'clock. Until then, good morning.
Maldron Hotels really are an escape from the norm. That's why we've left the studio to record this for real. Live at a show. Oh,
please take your seats. Second row from the back.
Join us, or wrap up and go stargazing along the coast, pick up some bits at a local market, and cozy up in a snug somewhere special. Wherever you go, you can save on every room, every night when you click on Maldron at maldronhotels.com. T's and C's apply.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook, and at highlandradio.com. And now, it's time for the talk of the Northwest, the 9 to noon show with Greg Hughes on Highland Radio.
Hello and a very good morning. It's just approaching 5 minutes past 9 on this Thursday. It's the 5th of January 2023. How are you keeping? I do hope you're very well indeed this morning, and I hope you're with us now for the next 3 hours in this show. We'll keep you entertained all day here on your number one local radio station. The lines are open for you right now if you want to have your views on what we've lined up for you, or to raise your own issues, or to share some stories, maybe some positivity as well. Of course, it's all very welcome on the programme. 086 60 25,000 new WhatsApps and texts, as you probably know. But I have to remind you at the start of every show, for those tuning in for the first time, and thankfully you continue to do so. Also, if you want to give us a call, 074 91 25,000, and emails, comments at highlandradio.com. And if you, as you heard, just as the show was about to kick off there, you can watch us on our Facebook pages, on YouTube, and on the website as well, and interact with us there. Good morning, John D. Creswell, who's watching with us on Facebook, I believe. Okay, the Donegal Democrat this morning Members of the Irish Nurses and Midwives organisation are living in fear because of the situation at Letterkenny University Hospital. They fear overcrowding could lead to something being overlooked. Neil Donoghue, the industrial officer for the Northwest branch of the INMO, has warned that staff are struggling with the current situation at LUH, where there has been significant overcrowding. Mr. Donoghue said this led to a significant strain on the hospital. And you heard yesterday on the show from Neil, and painting a worrying picture. We'll be speaking, I think it's scheduled at least, to speak to the General Manager of Letterkenny University Hospital later on in the programme. The Derry People Donegal News this morning: a man whose car crashed 10 minutes from Letterkenny Hospital was told it would take 4 hours for an ambulance to arrive. The shocking situation unfolded during what has been an extremely challenging week for the health service. On Monday alone, 116 people attended Letterkenny's emergency department. As of 8 a.m. on Tuesday, there were 56 patients awaiting admission. That number's down this morning somewhat, but still rather high. It's also fallen to some degree in Sligo as well. The hospital has also been treating 50 patients for COVID, while a further 31 are being sent for flu and respiratory illness. Are they treated for COVID or with COVID? If they're being treated for COVID, 50 of them, that's really quite startling. Or if it's with COVID, that's probably going to be reflective of what's happening in the community. The Tyrconnell Tribune this morning: the major multi-million euro housing and infrastructure development plans south of the River Swilly in Letterkenny that has been delayed for many years may finally be on track by in 2023. John McAteer writes that the 180-acre location is in the Leck and Scribley townlands, and a number of farms are involved. The proposal has been hailed as a game changer that could lead to major progress across all sectors of the town and its environs for future generations. Now the council's planning department has included lands in the Leck area in the draft plan that has gone to public consultation. Submissions will remain open for public consultation until the 16th of February. Following the process, the Chief Executive's report on the submission will be considered at the Council's plenary meeting at the end of March. The new plan is expected to be ready for adoption around Easter. More on that story on the front of and inside that paper there. The Derry News tells us that dissident Republican groups have bin challenged to stop their futile campaigns and internecine hatred. Internecine? It's a new word for me. The former Sinn Féin National Chairperson Mitchell McLaughlin made those calls. Speaking at a commemorative event last week to mark the 50th anniversary of IRA volunteer James Jr. McDade, Mr. McLaughlin addressed the dissident Republican groups directly. On to the Irish Independent, and they tell us that hospitals are bracing for a further surge in patients as health experts warn that the flu season is yet to reach its peak. This is the same story yesterday. It's just been repackaged for you. With emergency departments already under significant pressure and the majority of schools set to reopen today, parents are being warned to keep their children home if they're displaying new flu-like symptoms. Patients hospitalised with COVID have remained high but are relatively stable, as well as RSV cases, according to a government spokesperson. However, flu cases are much higher than previous years and are yet to peak. Officials have been warned. And as I say, we were talking about that yesterday. The Health Minister says just that on the programme yesterday. The Irish Times: hotels, community centres and churches could be used as schools for Ukrainian pupils on a short-term basis in the event that there's no spare capacity in local schools. Internal Department of Education documents show that while there are tens of thousands of spare places in schools nationally, there is a risk of shortages in certain areas in the event that very large numbers are located in hotels or other facilities. Contingency plans state that in these circumstances, schooling may need to take place on site. For example, a teacher employed by a local school could be based at a local hotel. This may not be required in some cases if there is significant space in local existing schools, but it would be good contingency planning to incorporate it as a default position and could help ensure faster access to education and language supports, the briefing document states. Some controversial remarks from Stephen Donnelly yesterday. Senior doctors clashed with Minister for Health Stephen Donnelly yesterday after he asked them to work weekends over coming weeks to help deal with the crisis in the hospital's emergency units. And what's happened is you have people involved in management at local and regional level who have come out really in defence of these consultants, saying they're already working above and beyond. And maybe perhaps Stephen Donnelly, whilst he's right to make the calls in certain circumstances, it's a broad stroke that he's taken here. Well, Mr. Donnelly and health officials want hospital consultants to work outside their normally rostered hours to speed up discharges and make space for patients to be admitted, to ease overcrowding in the units, which has hit record levels this week. And we had a really interesting insight on the show yesterday from the former assistant manager of Letterkenny University Hospital, Paddy Rooney. That whole interview is available for you either to watch back on our social media channels, or you can listen back on our website. It's in the news section there. It just gives an insight, even if you have more doctors, for example, and I'm not attributing this comment to Paddy Rooney as such, but even if you have more doctors discharging people, you also need care packages, care in the community. You can't just discharge them out into the car park. So that in and of itself, in my opinion, let me put it like that, would not be enough. They have to have somewhere to discharge them to, because there are people in hospital that are ready to be discharged, but there's nowhere for them to go. The Irish Daily Mail, Quilcha plan to sell off rural Ireland. I think this is actually quite an important story and good to see it on the front page of a newspaper. A British investment fund could buy upwards of 123,000 acres of rural Ireland as part of a deal to help the state's forestry agency meet its climate change targets. Quilcha is aiming to plant around 247,000 acres of new forest by 2015. That's an area larger than County Dublin, by the way. Half of that land will be purchased through a not-for-profit vehicle, with the remaining 123,000 acres coming through a partnership with investment companies. The Gresham House Fund is believed to be behind that partnership, which could see it purchase a portion of Irish agricultural land equivalent to the size of over 1,500 average farms or 50,000 football pitches. There are fears the plans will see the average price of an acre of land for forestry rise from 5,000 to 9,000 euros. So why, if it's to plant forestry to be the lungs of the world, for example, what is interesting a British investment house to fund that? Those are questions that need exploring further. The Irish Farmers Journal, 4 powerful polar orbiting satellites will inspect all Irish farms every 5 days in 2023. Big Brother is quite literally watching you. These satellites will constantly collect information to monitor farm compliance with the Basic Income Support for Sustainability, which replaces the Basic Payment Scheme in areas of natural constraint scheme. Can you imagine this is normalised, that we have massive cameras in the sky that will monitor us, or can monitor us, and in this case farmers, to make sure that they're abiding by every rule of the law? It really is quite remarkable when you think about it, and not necessarily in a good way either. It's just accepted. People worry about the location of CCTVs, and we have satellites circling above our heads that can really see absolutely everything, to the point whereby they can track changes in someone's farm. The newly intensified monitoring will identify non-compliance, such as the presence of ineligible structures, incorrectly categorised forage areas, and ineligible land use, such as scrub claimed as forage area. The information collected will also be used to determine farming activities in each land parcel. As I say, that is Big Brother gone mad, isn't it? Right, okay, on to the Irish Daily Star this morning. Unpleasant scenes, really. And I can anticipate that some people might say, well, it's good enough for them or whatever, but I don't know. I think we can maybe come up with solutions and protest in different ways. What am I talking about? Well, it was mentioned on the news. Politicians have condemned an alleged incident that saw a bag of poo thrown at Junior Minister Anne Rabbitte. The Fianna Fáil TD for Galway posted about the incident on her Twitter last night. She wrote, "Attended a meeting tonight and a bag of SHIT thrown at me and my government colleague. Minister Rabbitte, who is the Minister for State for Disabilities, did not provide any further details or comment on where the incident occurred. She did not divulge the identity of the other government colleague who attended the meeting with her." And a number of TDs replied to the tweet to commiserate with her and to condemn the incident. And it was a cross-party kind of a group. On to the Sun. Let's see what hit. Sorry, just fix my chair. Onto the Sun. Ireland had a €5 billion surplus last year due to record-breaking corporation tax returns from big tech and pharma firms. We're pulling in so much money at the moment. Now, we know some of this could be short-term because you can't rely on the corporate tax because you don't know when that bubble might burst or when the rug could be pulled from under us. But there's an awful lot of money there and, things should be better, really, shouldn't they? The money, is it being managed correctly? I wonder. But anyway, despite an extra $5 billion, more than they anticipated, ministers are yet to provide households with any certainty around the future of the cost of living support that are due to end in March. The Exchequer returns for 2022 were published yesterday, which outlined how much cash the state brought in through taxes last year and how much money the government spent. But oil at the moment is $80 a barrel. I know that doesn't tell the full story, but it's $80 a barrel at the moment. It was at 100 and was it 11? Now, exchange rates have changed and the strength of the dollar and all of that has to be factored in. But, and I know the cost of living is not all down to diesel, petrol and home heating oil. I'm not that naive. But you would wonder why we aren't seeing more of a reduction, I think, in terms of fuel costs, given the fact that oil is so cheap at the moment, the raw product of oil. And finally, Irish Daily Mirror. There are still people that will argue that, often people confuse the weather with climate, but something is happening, right? And you can sort of say, we can argue the toss as to what's happening or what we need to do or what we shouldn't do, but something is happening. Record warm temperatures for early January hit 8 European countries. Now, a hot day is the weather, right? Or cold days, the weather. And it's never going to get hot here, by the way. Global warming will not affect us in terms of heat. It's never going to get warmer here as such in any dramatic fashion. And we're not going to have big, long droughts and dry summers because of where we are. Global warming will actually leave us far wetter. We'll see more rain. But in other parts of Europe, they're seeing record temperatures, massive swings in temperatures that are along the lines of trends, okay, which is climate, whereas, a hot day is the weather. So people look out the window and God, it's freezing today. What about global warming? That's the weather. That's not the same thing, as far as I'm aware, anyway. We're seeing ski resorts having to close because there's no snow. But anyway, let's talk of these record temperatures for 8 European countries. The Netherlands, Czech Republic, Denmark and Poland, where capital Warsaw was 18.9 degrees on Sunday. Regional records were broken in Germany, France and Ukraine. In Bilbao, Spain, it was 25.1 degrees. That's 10 degrees above average. Last year was the hottest on record for Ireland, the UK, France and Spain. Experts said the extreme heat was almost certainly linked to climate change. As I say, climate and weather are two kind of different things, although obviously interlinked. All right, that was a run through the papers today. Anything you want to comment on there? As I say, obviously, we also want you to raise your own issues. People raise issues with us all the time here in the show. And a lot of the time, thankfully, we manage to get some answers or some resolution. We're going to keep doing that work throughout 2023, of course. Next, we're going to be discussing the pros and cons, the rights and wrongs, the for and against of Garda wearing body cams. Would you be for or against? Get your views in quick. 086 60 25,000.
The newspapers are courtesy of Kelly Centra Mountaintop Letterkenny, the 2022 C-Store National Off-Licence of the Year.
Great news! The Houseproud Group Stock Disposal Sale continues today and all this weekend at the Strabane store. With so much stock still to clear, prices have been cut again on furniture for every room. The massive stock disposal sale at Houseproud Abercorn Square, Strabane. Don't miss out. Sale also at Oma store.
Is your loan provider leaving town? Then why not look to your local credit union? At B&S Credit Union, we have a transfer loan just for you. The transfer process is straightforward, with an emphasis on personal service delivered locally. Apply online today at bnscu.ie or free phone us on 1800 290 390 or drop into our office at Main Street, Ballybuffet. New members welcome. B&S Credit Union. Local lending you can rely on. Loans are subject to approval. Terms and conditions apply. B&S Credit Union Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
The Brussels Eye in the Sky is watching you. For more in your Farmer's Journal, here's Paul Mooney.
New satellites to inspect all farms every 5 days. Battle of the Breeds, we reveal which suckler breed secured the top weanling prices. Jail for fraudster involved in online tractor and farm machinery scam. And following recent savage dog attacks, we detail your legal rights and how to deal with a dog worrying sheep on your farm.
Only inside this week's Irish Farmer's Journal. You cannot afford to miss it.
There's no better time to switch to 48. Get all data, calls and texts for $12.99 a month. And there's no contract, so you're not tied down. Plus, we're powered by 3. Switch and save at 48.ie. Monthly membership, fair usage policy of 200 gigabytes, 5,000 calls and texts, and terms and conditions apply. One-time activation fee of $12.99. See 48.ie.
Our wide range of 2023 Skodas are going fast. This is the sound of the Breen family getting their powerful diesel Kodiaq. And this is fully charged Fiona, driving away in her electric Skoda Enyaq. And this is the sound of someone who didn't place their order in time. Order your 2023 Skoda today, before it's too late. Skoda, made for Ireland.
Your local Skoda dealer is DMG Motors, Clare Road, Donegal Town. Telephone 074 9721 396 or visit dmgmotors.ie.
Okay, let us discuss now the wearing of body cams on Garda Síochána. We have a for and against, really, I think, here. We'll see if we can come up with some common ground on it. Former Garda Sergeant Christy Galligan, good morning to you.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you.
And same to you, same to you. Right, okay, you are keen for the introduction of legislation to allow for body cams to be routinely worn. People who watch any of these cop shows in America or Britain, as soon as there's any interaction with the public, they switch them on. There's a little red flashing light. You believe, do you, that we should employ the same system here?
Absolutely. I mean, this was the introduction of body cams was recommended by the Commissioner of Teacher Policing in 2018, and this prompted them for the legislation digital recording bill to be introduced, and where situations where the use of the camera could be justified, including, crime scenes where you go into domestic violence scenes, public order searches, and other potentially confrontational instances. So those were very, very important. They have been introduced in America and in the UK and other police forces worldwide. And that the best evidence you can have is body-worn cameras, because you're having real-time evidence what is actually occurring at that material time. Mm-hmm. So, and that both protects the member of the Garda Síochána, but it also protects members of the public, because it holds members of the Garda Síochána accountable. And there's certain amount of transparency and trust, since officers and their interventions are recorded. And evidence from other countries like the United States seems to confirm that these devices were linked to more desirable, socially desirable behaviour among police officers. And we saw there was a study in America and in conjunction with England through the Departments of Justice there, where it showed that the use of body-worn cameras didn't infringe the rights of people, but actually the evidence itself helped to ensure that the justice was swift in relation to police officers and the use of lethal force. It reduced the issues of domestic violence and other matters. So I think it's very, very important that this is introduced, and there's proper oversight, and we need to see that as well. That is all part and parcel of this bill.
What is the main reason you believe this should be introduced? The principal reason, though? I mean, you've outlined numerous reasons.
I think, well, one of the reasons, and as a former member of the force, tax and Gardaí, we've seen recently the tax and Gardaí in Dublin and other areas of the country, and we haven't this increase in the number of assaults. It's staggering. There's over 2,500 guards were assaulted over the past decade between that and up to October 2022. There was 194 so far, or 196 in 2022. And having body-worn cameras is a very important thing to protect the member themselves, because then it shows in real time what is actually occurring when they attend the scene, no matter what the scene is.
And do you know, and I'm not aware of this, and I'm not sure you are, but I presume you might be. Is the footage from body-worn cameras routinely used in court cases as part of prosecutions, or even as part of, as part of disciplinary hearings, for example? Say, for instance, a member of the public made a complaint against a UK police person. Like, is this footage routinely used for evidential purposes?
Oh, yes, they are. And it's very important because it's real time. Heretofore, where police officers went out, they could give evidence that might suit the issue or the situation at hand. It mightn't be the full picture. But with body-worn cameras, you get the full picture in real time. And that's very important, because if a member of the public does make a complaint against a member of the force, and there's dispute in relation to the evidence that is presented, then that body-worn camera, the issue of what the recording is, will be uploaded and presented. And I think that's what you need. And I think a lot of judges in this country, and I think a lot of members of the judiciary, even when it comes to, say, special criminal court or interviews of people in Garda stations, that they take that more seriously than the actual written word itself, because sometimes you don't get down everything you have written in a notebook or in a statement form. But where you have a digital recording of something, that's real time, and that's very important.
All right, let's take Liam Herrican, Executive Director with the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. Liam, I mean, maybe, we're trying to push back the tide here. If you're opposed to it, I'm not saying you are, I mean you in a generic sense. It looks like body cams will be introduced. What's your view on it?
Good morning, Greg. Well, I think Christy set out very clearly what the argument in favour of body-worn cameras by police are. As Christy said, the Commission on Future Policing recommended their introduction in 2018. The argument is that they will improve criminal justice outcomes, reduce violence against police, and also improve police behaviour towards the public. And if all of those things were true and were proven, I think that we would be very open to their introduction. Our analysis of the evidence from the United States and elsewhere is that it's a much more unconvincing picture. That some of the initial research did indicate some benefits, but more recent large studies in Washington, D.C. and in other parts of the United States are raising questions about the benefits. And if the benefits are not compelling, then we need to go and look at the cost. And the cost of introducing body-worn cameras, apart, of course, from the financial cost, and we have an under-resourced police service with a lot of gaps in resourcing at the moment, there's also the question of increasing the level of surveillance in policing and in society more generally. So the dangers that come from increasing the amount of filming of the public by police are that private data will be used inappropriately, and that there will be a chilling effect on people taking part in events in public spaces, in protests, strikes, and so on. So this is really about looking at the evidence. And if there was a proven case that the benefits outweighed the costs, we'd be very open to it. What has been disappointing is that since the Commission on Future Policing made their recommendation in 2018, initially we and other groups were invited to make submissions to the Department of Justice. They said they wanted to carry out some research before they proceeded to look at the evidence, but they've never published the outcome of that. And whereas there is legislation before the Oireachtas at the moment, the Garda Digital Recordings Bill, we've never seen this evidence on the benefits or otherwise. We had helpfully suggested that maybe the prudent approach would be to start off with a pilot project, maybe trial the use of body cameras in an Irish environment to see how they operate here before we roll it out across the whole world. And I mean, I think the real issue here, and Christy made reference to this, they're used extensively in the United States in particular and in the United Kingdom. The United States, the argument for introducing them was because of the number of fatal shootings by police of members of the public, and they wanted to take drastic measures to deal with that problem. Thankfully, not something that's a common problem here.
Yeah,
and
but
in the United Kingdom,
can be heavy-handed, and they can be heavy. Can I just?
They can.
I mean, I don't know if either of you have read the National Institute of Justice. Now, I'm not sure how reputable body they are, but they seem to have done quite extensive research on this. And what I found interesting about it, and they looked at what was going on in Birmingham and a number of US states and what have you, but it didn't seem to benefit the police much. There were it had no effect in a lot of cases. In some cases, there were less complaints. In some cases, there were less instances of heavy-handed action by the police. But it didn't seem to materially affect in other words, it didn't create any reduction in attacks on the police, Christy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know you're making this argument, you've pointed out, yes, it might, but all the evidence heretofore seems to suggest that it's only the public that benefits from this, or there is no benefit at all. So with that in mind, is it worth this increased level of surveillance?
Yeah, but you can't compare like with like. You're talking about an armed police force in America, and where the first action of any police forces in America is produce a lethal weapon and discharge, and we've seen it all time after time. But the fact is, each and every day, and it was one of the things I thought about before I came on your program. Each and every day, we have images uploaded on Facebook, Instagram, and other things every day about every aspect of our lives, and we're talking about the right to privacy. There is no privacy anymore. Everything is being uploaded. Now, the Garda are seeking to have, and the Commission of Future Policing are seeking to have that extra tool that protects them and the public.
Yeah, you see, the thing about protecting them, though, Chris, like, if this conversation was 10 years ago, it would be so different now. But if I ever see, say, for instance, Gardaí being antagonised or challenged, the person responsible is actually videoing it or live streaming it. You talked of other instances that happened in the capital recently. All of the footage was posted by those responsible or watching on TikTok, all that footage is there. I just wonder what the body cam footage from inside a vehicle or whatever actually adds to this.
But the body cam is primarily, the body cam camera, as I said, the body cam that had been going to be asked to be worn by members of the force is in relation to real-time evidence at that material time, presented to the courts in a proper official manner. You don't have to go drilling looking for CCTV and every other aspect or other evidence, but the body-worn camera will help and assist members of the force in the due execution of their duties. That's all it is.
Let me go back to Liam there, Christy, if that's all right.
I agree with Liam. that there should have been maybe a pilot program introduced before it was rolled out overall. Yes, and there have been pilot programs in the Garda Síochána over the years. Now, there is a difficulty in the Garda Síochána. There's a lot of difficulties in the Garda Síochána at the present moment, and Liam highlighted them. But I think this is just another added tool to the forces, many tools that they require.
Right,
but
Liam.
I think it's one very, very important.
I'll come back to you, Christy. Liam, and you talked about, surveillance of people at protests, and maybe it could hinder all that. But I think it's not that long ago, and I think it were you that I was speaking to, that plans are afoot that would effectively allow, cameras that were erected to monitor fly tipping being used for evidential purposes. You know what I mean? So, in the wider scale of where this government and the police force seems to want to go, the body cam wearing element seems almost trivial in comparison to how much overreach they want to have in terms of access to, video footage that's out there.
Yeah, and I think that there is a wider context here, and that's why I think we should be cautious about adding to the levels of surveillance. I mean, this proposal for body-worn cameras is part of a wider proposal for increased levels of surveillance in many respects. And one of the really controversial proposals that's out there at the moment is proposal that the guards would have use of facial recognition technology, the ability to match video footage against databases of faces, something that's been used by authoritarian regimes in some parts of the world, and a technology that the European Union is currently considering banning in the context of law enforcement. So there is a much wider context going on. One of the reasons we need to be cautious about this, and it's something that Christy touched on as well, is that juries and courts can very often assume that digital evidence or video footage is perfect, that it is infallible, that it always presents an objective and accurate account of an event that happened. And the research indicates that that's not always the case. Apart from the potential for such evidence to be tampered with, of course, it is a point of view perspective. It depends on which way a camera is facing at a particular time, and it also depends on when a recording starts. There may be events, for example, preceding an incident which involved provocation by one side or the other, which provides a different context to the footage of a particular incident over a couple of seconds or minutes. So there is a danger that we are going down a road of a justice system which over-relies on digital evidence. And the context of the Irish policing situation versus the American or British one is important here too, because the Commission of Future Policing, when you look at the recommendations in their totality, are about a community police vision, an idea of a policing service in this island which is based on community engagement, not a militaristic approach as we see in other parts of the world. And if we go down the road of giving the guards more and more technology, more and more surveillance, more and more cameras, are we creating a barrier between the public and the guards,
Liam, can I ask
and damaging the types of relationships we're trying to create?
Yeah, can I ask a question that maybe talks to this, and maybe it's conflation, I don't know. Not recently, a couple of years ago, I received a notice from eFlow, I think it was, that stated that my car was on the M50. And they produced a number plate picture, and it was quite selective because all it was on the number plate. And I then had to disprove that. I was just going about my everyday business, but I actually had to dedicate quite a lot of my time to disprove this evidence that they had that I was driving on the M50. As it turned out, someone must have cloned the number plates or just used a number plate. Is that kind of what we're talking about here? Could we find that on a grander scale in a court case where a snapshot in time, rather than it being the old way of defending yourself, that you would find yourself having to disprove or contextualize an image or a video, similar to the example I gave with eFlow or iFlow or whatever it's called?
I mean, the same legislation is also making proposals to extend the use of what's called automatic number plate recognition technology. So this is all at play, very much. And all of these things, if used appropriately in the right context and tightly regulated, can be useful criminal justice tools. But we are not starting from a very strong position in Ireland. The Data Protection Commission has been hugely critical of Garda Síochána over many years for its data protection policies internally, how it uses things like automatic number plate recognition and CCTV already. So in that context, we should be very cautious about adding technologies on. It seems that the guards do not have internally the technological capacity or indeed the data protection policies and procedures to properly use the technology that they're already using. And that's why there's been so many findings against them by the Data Protection Commission. So I think our priority would be, let's get those things right first of all, before we even start talking about adding things like body-worn cameras or facial recognition technology.
All right, finally, Christy, obviously this is a complex issue that feeds into a broader conversation, as Liam has very well pointed out there, and one I'm sure you're very well aware of yourself. With all that in mind, has your view changed at all?
No, but where anything will be tested is in a court of law. It doesn't matter whether the legislation could be flawed, as we found out legislation over the years that can be flawed, that can be introduced, but we need to see these things tested in a court of law. And the Irish courts of justice are very, very strict in what you present before them. You know, it will go through it in minutiae at the end of the day, and we know it go all the way to the Supreme Court, even European courts of justice. So we haven't tested it yet, but we needed to be tested. But I would agree that we needed to we needed the pilot program where body-worn cameras in different areas of... We are a community-orientated policing system, yes, and I'm glad to say I was part of that community-orientated policing system. But this is just an extra tool. I don't think you're talking, that something wholesale that is going to be abused right, left and centre. No, the body-worn camera, once the guard puts it on, he switches it on, or she switches it on, going to a different scene. We all want protections The guards want their own protection, and I'm sure members of the public want protection as well. And it's just another added tool to that protection.
All right, okay. But you, in your letter to a national paper, said we have freedoms that we have taken long for granted, but we must protect those whose job it is to protect those very freedoms. But I suppose when we feel like we're being watched every single minute of the day, you wonder how free we actually are.
Yeah.
Liam Herrick, Executive Director with the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, thanks for engaging with us. We appreciate it. And
thanks, Greg.
Thank you. And Christy Galligan, former Garda Sergeant, thank you very much indeed as well.
Winter sale at Brian McCormick Sports now on. In-store and online. Discounts of up to 30% off. Asics, New Balance, Brooks and Hoka footwear. GT2000, Gel Cumulus, New Balance 880, Hoka Clifton 8 to name just a few. Treat your feet in our winter sale. Grab a discount and stretch those legs. Look the part, play the part. In-store and online. Click and collect on bmcsports.ie.
We have recycling all wrapped up this festive season. Use your local Bring Banks for all those empty glass bottles, jars, food and drink cans. Please remember not to leave any waste materials at the banks. To find your nearest Bring Bank, visit donegalcoco.ie. Recycle more with Donegal County Council.
The Aer Lingus January sale is now on. With over 4 million seats on sale, we've got your 2023 travel sorted. From just €179 each way, as part of a return trip, you can fly to New York, LA and everywhere in between. Take that magical holiday to Orlando, plan that action-packed week away in Chicago, or explore the sights of San Francisco. Visit airlingus.com and grab your seats today. T's and C's apply. Travel 1st of February to 31st of May 2023.
At Hickey, Clark and Langan Insurance Brokers, they compare quotes from all the leading insurers, so you get a great price. Home, motor and van, farm, holiday home, travel and liability insurance, they quote them all. So if the worst happens, you're covered. For a competitive insurance quote today, call Hickey, Clark and Langan on 9126688 or pop into their office at Ballymacool, Letterkenny. Hickey, Clark and Langan General Insurances Limited, trading as Hickey, Clark and Langan, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Okay, we're joined on the programme now by Sean Murphy, the General Manager of Letterkenny University Hospital. Thank you very much for joining us, Sean, and good morning to you, and a Happy New Year to you as well, although I know it's one under which you and your staff are under a great deal of pressure.
Thank you, Greg, and Happy New Year to you too. Yes, it's a very hectic start to the new year, but not surprised.
Before we get into, I suppose, getting information out there that's going to be useful for the public, how much of what is going on and coping with what's going on in a hospital like Letterkenny University Hospital is under your control, if you know what I mean? I know you're in control of the hospital, don't get me wrong, but how much can you sort of influence, or your management team influence within that hospital, and how much is sort of dictated by, you know, staffing issues, and obviously the huge numbers turning up at the hospital? Like, what kind of space in there do you have to try and affect efficiency and change?
Okay, I suppose the simple answer, Greg, is that a significant proportion of the demand on our services is outside our control, and it's a mixture of the demography of the population we're serving, the levels of illness, chronic illness in the community, the current loads of respiratory illnesses, COVID, influenza, RSV, the capacity of visiting primary care and community services to be able to take patients or have patients allow us to discharge in a prompt manner, and I suppose again that, as I say, that results in increase in numbers presenting to the hospital, and it's not unique to Letterkenny. It's an issue that every hospital on this island, and in fact, we know our colleagues in the NHS in the UK are facing exactly the same challenges at the moment. This year is an extremely busy year. And as I say, we weren't surprised. We knew that it was going to be extremely busy. You hope that the levels of infection in the community may not be as bad, but you expect it and you plan that they will be. And that's what we're facing at the moment. In terms of what we can do, obviously throughout the year we've been recruiting staff. We spoke, I think it's in November, early December, around the additional beds we'd put into the hospital, the extra staff we'd recruited into the hospital, and they are all fully deployed at the moment. But also there's a reality that our staff are part of the community, so we're seeing those levels of illness, those levels of respiratory illness affect our staff as well. So we have a number of staff that themselves are on off sick, which is also then putting pressure on the remaining staff.
And can you put a figure on that for us? I think it's 150 with COVID across the whole Cialta group, but obviously flu, RSV is an issue. Is it easy for you to put a percentage on how many staff you are down due to sickness?
We've got 2,300 staff in the hospital. And actually just under 2,400. Now, some of those are part-time, obviously they're not all full-time, but in terms of people, there's just under 2,400. And as we're here today now, we're getting, obviously today's figures are still coming in, but I've got 60 plus staff off with COVID or other respiratory illnesses, and about 200 off with for other health reasons.
Which is significant. So you're over 10% down, or close to 10% down in terms of staffing numbers.
It's actually slightly over, yeah.
Okay. What is the problem? What is causing the problem in terms of the throughput and the output at the hospital, as far as you can see? Obviously, there's a huge amount of numbers. You've talked about the staff there. But what is causing the fact that's leading to 35 people on trolleys? What is the delay in freeing beds that would get them into the hospital because they're sick enough to actually be admitted? So what is the problem that you have at the moment?
Okay. So again, and I actually heard last night, I got to listen to some of your interview with Paddy Rooney yesterday, and I think again, a lot of the issues were picked up in that interview. So first and foremost, the first challenge is just the sheer numbers coming through the hospital. I was saying to Caroline before I came on that if you look at something like Stevens's Day, historically it would have been, there would have been a significant level of activity, but it would be one of the quieter days. This year, levels of patients through the emergency department of Stevens Day exceeded what would have been the historic busy Monday. Right, so we're seeing our numbers have gone from what would have been around 100 patients over the Christmas period coming through the emergency department every day, now gone up to between 120 and 160 depending on the days. So that's a very significant increase in the number of patients presenting. The second factor is that a significant number of those patients are extremely ill and require admission. So they're not patients we can treat quickly in the emergency department and send home. And so that puts pressure on our beds. And everybody talks about opening more beds. And I know I'm sorry to repeat myself here now, but I suppose just to remind people that what I was saying before Christmas, so we've opened extra beds throughout the COVID and again throughout this year, and opened a further 13 beds in October. So we at the moment have the highest number of beds that we've ever had in this hospital, the largest number of beds that we've ever had in the hospital. We're just under 380 beds open in the hospital, but the demand is still exceeding that capacity.
So what you need, we talked and you referenced that interview yesterday, in terms of then discharging people from hospital, like how many, can you give us an idea, because I think you referenced Paddy Rooney's interview yesterday. He said these figures aren't routinely available. Can you give us a sense of how many beds did you say? 380. So could you give us a sense of that 380, how many people could be discharged if there were care packages or somewhere for them to be discharged to? Can you give us a ballpark figure of how many of those beds?
I can. So,
go ahead.
So obviously So the ward rounds are continuing today. So these figures ebb and flow throughout the day, but we've started this morning with 25 patients that are medically fit for discharge out of the hospital, and that we're not in a position to discharge them yet because they can't just go home. They need some level of care outside, and we need to ensure that those services are available for them.
And that's quite significant because there's 35 on trolleys this morning, and if you were able to discharge those patients who are well enough to leave an acute hospital, the overcrowding figure would look really quite. It potentially could be in single figures effectively.
Yes, or very close to it anyway. You'd be around the 10 or 12.
So who
there'll always be maybe some degree delay.
Who is responsible within the HSE? It's not the hospital's job, is it, to make sure that this additional care that might be needed in certain cases is available? Then is the hospital reliant on other arms of the HSE to make those provisions?
Absolutely. So, and we have worked and continue to work very closely with our colleagues in community services to actually expedite those discharges out as soon as possible. One of the big challenges is that our community hospitals, no more than our acute hospital, are also full. A number of nursing homes and community hospitals are also dealing with COVID restrictions and COVID outbreaks, and that limits their capacity. We would have a number of patients that are waiting for home care packages to be made available, and there's a major challenge in recruiting home carers. It's not that the money's not there. It's not that people aren't trying to recruit people, but the difficulty is it always takes time. Now, the issue of discharges is a real challenge for us. But put this in context. I mean, we have in the past been at the point where we would have had 30 to 40 patients delayed. I'm not saying 25 is a good position to be in, but it's not that that work hasn't been there hasn't been success in reducing those numbers. But we need further reductions again ongoing.
Another issue, obviously, that's been highlighted is diagnostics, and effectively the impression is given that it's almost office hours, not uniquely, but that's when you have the best level of resources. And we also have Stephen Donnelly sticking his opinion, well, not sticking his opinion in, expressing his opinion, calling on consultants to do more, to work weekends, to work longer hours. Do you agree with him that consultants need to be working harder in our hospitals, that they should be coming in at weekends and maybe working later into the evening? Do you agree with him?
I suppose I wouldn't agree that they need to be working harder, because I've got to say our consultants work extremely hard. If you're asking, do we need to be able to have more consultant input and more services available out of hours? Yes, that would certainly help. But again, I would say Letterkenny is actually one of the better hospitals in terms of what we've achieved in that. I mean, we have consultants across virtually all specialties that are working most of Saturday and a large chunk of Sunday on site in the hospital. We have radiology services running. If you talk to radiographers or radiologists, they'll tell you how busy they are on Saturdays and Sundays, doing CT scans and X-rays, and again, putting diagnostics in. It's not all about consultants, though. The consultants work as part of a team. So there's a challenge if you have a consultant in, say, in radiology. And we do have our consultants are in radiology every Saturday and every Sunday. Without having the radiographers to actually do the X-rays, to do the CT scans, then the consultants can only do part of the work. So you need the full team. Now, we've increased our diagnostic capacity in the last year, and we have increased what we do both in the evenings and out of hours. And again, a lot of our scanners work through to 8 o'clock on most evenings, and say working through Saturdays and Sundays. But again, in an ideal world, and this is where I would agree with the Minister, I'd like to see much more investment so that we would build up that full support team, not just the consultants, but all the support teams around.
Okay, well, speaking of investment, he said that he's made an extra €35 million available to your hospital. How much of that is available to actually improve services and not to meet in inflation in terms of wages and other areas? Because you would have heard also from Paddy Rooney yesterday, depending if you heard the whole interview, he said that you would be left with pittance to actually try and provide an improved service. Is that an accurate representation?
Again, I think Paddy hit on a number of the issues yesterday.
I understand that you have to be careful. Sure. I'm not trying to get you to fall. I'm not trying to get you to fall out with Stephen Donnelly, and I understand that you have to be. But my point is
good because I need his support to keep this up and running.
Of course you do. But of that 35 million, how much would you have to spend from that to actually improve service, not to maintain, but to actually improve and invest? How much of that 35 million would be at your disposal?
So there is a significant proportion, but it's nothing like 35 million. There a significant element of that funding has gone into actually allowance to retain the extra nurses, if you recall, before pay bill. But these are so the nurses. If you recall, when we spoke again previously, I talked about the fact that we had over 200 staff extra within the hospital compared to 12 months ago. But a lot of that is to ensure that we maintain those staff coming into this year. We have got funding, and the Minister would have talked about the 4 extra consultants in emergency medicine that have been approved for the hospital. One of my challenges there is that I have money that I can't spend because I can't recruit the doctors, because every hospital in the country has gotten extra money to recruit doctors, and there's a limited number of people out there to recruit. So we have an ongoing.
And it doesn't help when
recruit additional staff.
It doesn't help when a consultant leaves, citing impossible working conditions. That's not great for a recruitment campaign.
No, and as I say, it's an issue that is not unique to Letterkenny. It's faced. I know our colleagues across the border are having exactly the same challenges in terms of recruitment. And our colleagues in the UK and our colleagues throughout Ireland are having the same challenges.
Right. We only have a couple of minutes. What's the important message to get out, Sean?
Okay, so I suppose first of all, a couple of key messages I would say to people. We are experiencing an extremely busy time in the hospital at the moment. We are trying to facilitate visiting because we know how important it is to patients and their families, but I would plead with people, if you're feeling unwell, if you have any respiratory symptoms, or if you're feeling unwell, please don't come into the hospital. The risk of infection spreading in the hospital.
You mean as visitors there, by the way, just for clarity, Sean?
Sorry.
You mean as visitors?
Sorry, visitors, yes. Visitors, yes. So do not visit the hospital if you're feeling unwell. If you're coughing and sneezing, if you've got respiratory symptoms, be cautious. Be overly cautious and play safe. I know people may wish to see their loved ones, but please bring people who may be ill and infectious are putting the patients and our staff at risk. So please don't come if you're not well. Also, again, where appropriate, for patients who may be unwell, feel they need medical attention, but aren't in an emergency situation, please contact your GP or the out of hours GP service, and also contact your pharmacist rather than come to the hospital as the first port of call. Again, that's really important. And GPs will refer patients on to the hospital where they feel that's appropriate. About 50% of our patients that come into the hospital come in as GP referrals. Again, it doesn't stop access to the hospital. It just means that the patients that are coming in are those that are most in need of acute hospital care. And I would also ask that if our patients are fit to be discharged, I'd ask families, and I know it can be very difficult with working and family arrangements, etc., but it's really important that when patients, decisions made that the patient's fit for discharge, that transport arrangements and families come in to collect those patients as quickly as possible, because as soon as we get a patient out of the hospital, we can then clean that room area and take another patient off a trolley in the hospital. So every hour of delay has an impact across the whole service.
All right, finally, Sean, maybe...
I would say...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, for those patients who do come into the emergency department, please bear with us if you're experiencing extremely long waits, because as ever our priority is on the most ill patients. And again, that means that patients that are less acutely ill will experience long waiting times, and please bear with us and bear with the staff. It's not their fault. They're doing their best. Everybody's working extremely hard. We don't keep patients waiting any longer than we can possibly help.
Do you have any short-term scope to increase that space or to find an alternative space? I know your colleagues down in Galway are trying to repurpose an old ED room. Have you any capacity or space there or plan to try and make that experience somewhat more tolerable for people?
So unfortunately, Greg, at the moment we have used all our capacity. So we opened the extra 13 beds in October. They're fully utilised. We restricted our planned surgery for both inpatient and day surgery for the month of January, because we knew we were going to be extremely busy. As we're talking this morning, we've got 11 patients in our day surgery unit that are inpatients. It's an area designed for patients to come in, have their surgery and go home, but we're using that as additional capacity to take patients out of the emergency department. So we've also had to put up beds in the treatment rooms in our wards, and in some cases in the corridors in our wards, to actually cope with that demand. We don't have any other space left at this stage. There's also a considerable amount of work we're doing in terms of the investment we put into diagnostics. We've you talked about diagnostics, really important for us, and we have been using our second CT scanner that the Friends funded. We got extra approval for extra staff last year to run that, and we'll run that as many days as possible. The rate limiting step there is our own sickness levels is impacting on that. We're also working very closely with our colleagues in the National Ambulance Service to turn around the ambulances as quickly as possible, and we have an ambulance officer on site working with us to make sure that we get patients seen and
off the ambulances as quick as possible. Okay.
And I suppose one of the issues, and you talk about what can be done. Maybe we don't have time this morning, we might come back to it at some stage, but there is a lot of work being undertaken in community in terms of developing new models of care, alternative options for patients, instead of having to attend the hospital, to be seen by medical staff and nurses, senior nursing staff and therapists within the community.
When might we see some action? When might we actually start seeing some of that available? I mean, like, there's people that just need a dose of antibiotics or a steroid, and they're ending up in hospital. Like, when that would be really useful, I think, for you. When might that start happening? So some of that started to roll out really from the second half of last year. Again, the recruitment was the biggest challenge. We're already seeing some of the impact. The difficulty is the sheer levels of demand within our community, and as with every other community in the country, we improve in one area, but it's still not enough to stem the tide of patients requiring care. Those programs will continue to develop, and will it probably, in fairness, is probably 4 to 6 months before we see the full benefits of them.
but every month we're getting more and more patients through those services. And again, that is work that is continuing. I know our colleagues in primary care have put on extra GPs in the out-of-hours service, again, to make sure that the GP out-of-hours services is accessible to patients as an alternative to somebody getting in the car and turning up at the emergency department and then find out having an extremely long wait.
All right, Sean, thank you very much for your time this morning. I appreciate it. There's so much more we really probably needed to get to, but time has run out. It's run out to the extent that news is going to be 4.5 minutes late. My apologies. We'll be back with more afterwards.
Live, on air, online and on the Highland Radio app. This is Highland Radio News.
Good morning. It's 4.5 minutes past 10. Donald Kavanagh at the Highland Radio News Desk. The General Manager of Letterkenny University Hospital says 10% of the hospital's staff is currently off sick. Just over 60 people have COVID or other respiratory conditions, while around 200 staff members are off with other illnesses. Speaking to Greg on the 9 till noon show a short time ago, Sean Murphy said demand is exceeding the hospital's capacity at present, and that's the root cause of the crisis facing the facility. He said much of the pressure being experienced is outside the hospital's control.
It's a mixture of the demography of the population we're serving, the levels of illness, chronic illness in the community, the current loads of respiratory illnesses, COVID, influenza, RSV, the capacity of visiting primary care and community services to be able to take patients or have patients allow us to discharge in a prompt manner. I suppose, again, that, as I said, that results in an increase in numbers presenting to the hospital.
The funeral of former Pope Benedict is drawing to a close in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican. Tens of thousands of mourners attending the open-air ceremony. Letterkenny woman Mary Maguire read one of the liturgical readings. The funeral also attended this morning by the Emeritus Bishop of Rafo, Dr. Philip Boyce. The 95-year-old former Pope is being laid to rest in the papal crypt in St. Peter's Basilica following his death on New Year's Eve. Donegal is bearing the brunt of industrial wind. That's according to one of the founding members of the Guibara Conservation Group. The county is home to over 300 turbines. A public meeting is set to take place on Saturday in Lettermecca Ward to discuss concerns over proposed wind farm developments in West Donegal. Patricia Sharkey believes the distribution of wind turbines in Ireland at present is disproportionate.
Just ourselves in North Kerry that are bearing the burden of this industrial wind for the whole country. So we would like to see other counties play their part. And when other counties have got as many turbines as Donegal has, then let them come back and we'll discuss it. But why should a small county like Donegal bear the environmental burden of wind industry for cities far away, industries far away?
5 teenagers who were arrested in Omagh after failing to stop for Garda in Donegal are due to appear in court today. They were arrested after a white Toyota Aqua car failed to stop for Garda at Lifford Bridge in the early hours of yesterday morning. One 16-year-old has been charged with a number of offences, including aggravated vehicle taking, causing damage to a vehicle, driving when unfit, dangerous driving, going equipped for theft and driving without a licence. The other 4 teenagers have been charged. They'll appear at Strabane Magistrates Court again later. Garda and Donegal are warning of fraudulent text messages which are currently doing the rounds. They say they're aware of people receiving messages purporting to be from the HSE, advising that the recipient is a close contact of someone with COVID-19. The HSE has again confirmed these messages are not genuine. Police are being advised not to click any link contained in a text and to delete the message and block the sender. You can see a picture of that text on our website, highlandradio.com. And the delivery of the flood relief scheme in the Glenswilly area of Letterkenny has been welcomed. Last year, the road in the vicinity of Glenswilly National School flooded on a number of occasions, leaving some residents trapped in their homes with the road impassable. Works are ongoing and are now almost complete. The Cathaoirleach of Letterkenny Milford Municipal District, Councillor Donald Mandy Kelly, says the works have had a positive impact.
The flooding issue has been addressed. You could say it's 90% complete there now at the minute. We have seen heavy rain there since the pipes have gone in, and you could say torrential rain as well. No sign of flooding, so thankfully what I had suggested from the start has been carried out and the flooding has been addressed there. The men on the ground there, They've done a fantastic job of putting in the pipes and the new drainage there, and it has alleviated now any flooding issues for all the local residents in the area.
Weather forecast and Met Éireann tell us it'll be windy today with strong southwest winds, very strong gusts at times, especially near the coast. Mostly cloudy with outbreaks of rain, some dry periods as well. Rain clearing later to clear spells and occasional showers this evening. Highs this afternoon of 9 or 10 degrees Celsius. That's Highland Radio News. We're back with news again at 11 o'clock. Until then, from the news team, good morning.
The obituary notice is for this Thursday morning, January the 5th. The death has occurred of Catherine Kitty McConaughey, Corey, Portsalon, Donegal. Kitty's remains will repose at her late residence from 4 o'clock this afternoon. Removal from there at 10:30 on Saturday morning, arriving at St Columba's Church Mass Mount for 11 o'clock Requiem Mass, followed by burial in the adjoining graveyard. Rosary at 8 o'clock both nights. Family time only, please, from 10 p.m. until 10 a.m. The Requiem Mass can be viewed live via the St Mary's Fanavolti and St Columba's Mass Mount Facebook page. Family flowers only, please. Donations if desired to the Donegal Hospice, care of any family member or Macateer funeral directors. The death has taken place of Patsy McGlinchey, Comlin, Kerry Keel. Remains will arrive at St Mary Star of the Sea Church, Glenvar, at 6 o'clock this evening to repose overnight. Rosary at 9 o'clock tonight. Requiem Mass at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, with interment afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. Family flowers only, please. Donations in lieu to Brentwood Nursing Home, care of Dunleavy Funeral Directors. The death has taken place of Michael Finlay, 193 Ballycolman Estate, Strabane, reposing at Quigley's Funeral Home this afternoon from 2 until 3 o'clock and tomorrow evening from 5 o'clock, with removal at 6 o'clock to St Mary's Church, Melmount for Requiem Mass on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Cremation afterwards in Lakelands Crematorium at 4 o'clock. The Requiem Mass can be viewed live via the parish webcam. The death has taken place of Grace Wilkie, née Houston, Drumore Letterkenny and formerly Letchermore Drumkeen. Removal from Grace's late residence tomorrow morning at 11:15, going to St Junan's Cathedral, Letterkenny for 12 noon Requiem Mass, which can be viewed live on churchservices.tv. Interment afterwards to New Leck Cemetery. Family flowers only, please. Donations in lieu of flowers if desired to the Society of St Vincent de Paul, care of any family member. House strictly private, please. The death has taken place of John J. Meehan, 331 Ballycolman Estate, Strabane, and formerly of Coolitee, Lifford. Remains reposing at his home. Fiona leaving his home tomorrow morning at 9:20 for Requiem Mass in St Mary's Church, Melmount at 10 o'clock. Interment afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. Family time, please, from 11 p.m. until 11 a.m. The Requiem Mass can be viewed live via the parish webcam. The death has occurred of Margaret McDade, Ballybow Temple, Cloughan, County Donegal. Margaret's remains will repose at her late residence until removal at 10:30 tomorrow morning for funeral mass in Our Lady of Perpetual Succour, Glenfin, with interment afterwards in Kilworth Cemetery, Glenfin. Requiem Mass can be viewed on mcmmedia.tv. The death has taken place of Kathleen O'Donnell, née Sweeney, Killalt, Fulcara, formerly of Ballyness, Fulcara. Funeral from her late residence this morning for 12 noon Requiem Mass in Christ the King Church, Gortahork, with burial afterwards in the adjacent cemetery. Funeral Mass can be viewed live on mcmmedia.tv. House private, please, before the funeral today. Donations in lieu of flowers if desired to the Irish Cancer Society, care of any family member. And the death has taken place at Packy Farn, Main Street, Clonmany, reposing at his home. Funeral leaving from there tomorrow afternoon at 2:45, going to St Mary's Church, Clonmany for Requiem Mass at 2 o'clock, with burial afterwards in the adjoining cemetery. Family flowers only, please. Donations in lieu of desire to St Columkill Village, care of any family member or Comsky funeral directors. House private, please, from 10 o'clock tonight and before the funeral tomorrow. Funeral Mass can be viewed live on churchservices.tv. For more details, including any family health guidelines for wakes and funerals, please go to highlandradio.com.
Okay, you're very welcome back to the 9 till noon show. Thanks for all your texts and messages coming in. We will get through those very, very shortly. We're going to stay on this topic because it is one that's so crucial, and we're trying to, over the course of the various conversations, maybe rather than just always talking about the story around it, is to try and get into the story so we all have a better understanding of where we're at and where we're going and how we might get there. So hopefully you're finding that element of the conversation useful. We hear, and it's still important, and people can share their real world experiences of it, but we need to figure out what's the problem and how we fix it, or else we're just perpetually having the same conversations, albeit very, very important, and get them into us as well, by the way. You know, we need to try and come up to a place where we get to the end of this. You know, 086 60 25,000 WhatsApps and texts, or call 07491 25,000. Right. Bingo and a break, because the last interview ran over a little, and then we're back with more.
It's time for NCBI Bingo on Highland Radio.
It's Thursday, the 5th of January. Jackpot Day. You're playing for the jackpot prize of €13,400 on the pink sheet. The reference number is S4. It's game number 1. The jackpot number is 84. This number can come out in any position from the next 10 numbers drawn. And now, here are your daily numbers. 41. 46. 57. 11. 83. 9. 17. 53. 74. And finally, 58. Phone your claim to 9104833 before 8 tonight, leaving your name, contact number and the name of the shop where you purchased your book, and we'll call you back the next working day. Get all your NCBI Bingo information at highlandradio.com.
At Holland & Barrett this new year, you can buy one, get one free on hundreds of your wellness favourites. Mix and match across the vitamins you need, including many top brands you love like Star Power and Viviscal. Plus get even more with free personalised advice from one of our qualified advisors, so you can find the right wellness solutions for you. Don't miss out. Shop our buy one, get one free in-store, online and on the app now. Holland & Barrett. Wellness that's worth it. Ends 31st of January 2023. Selected lines only. Cheapest item free. See our website for full T's and C's.
Edel Cashman, liver transplant recipient, encourages you to talk about organ donation with your family.
People say it's the gift of life, and that's almost become a cliche. But it literally is the gift of new life. It's just so important for people to talk about organ donation, because it's not something I would have given a second thought to before it became my life.
For information, visit hse.ie/organ donation and start talking about organ donation today. From the HSE.
Are you tired of waiting for treatment or surgery? Did you know you can receive immediate treatment across the border under the new NI planned healthcare scheme at potentially no cost? Donegal patients are still being treated with us at Kingsbridge Private Hospital Northwest post-Brexit. The process is easy and our dedicated team will help guide you through it. So why wait? Contact us today to find out how you can skip the waiting lists and receive treatment in Northern Ireland. Visit kingsbridgeprivatehospital.com. Because life matters.
Shrink your bill this January with Dunstore's Double Savers. Save in the aisle on ingredients for a protein-rich chicken casserole. That's 500 grams of chicken thighs, only €3.89. Irish onions and garden peas, 69 cents each. Baby potatoes, carrots and chicken casserole seasoning mix, all for a total of less than €8. Then save again at the till with our 5 of 25 grocery vouchers. Double Savers from Dunn Stores. Always better value. Terms and conditions apply. Voucher can be used on next grocery shop of €25 or more.
Highland Radio weather updates with Ireland West Airport. Thinking of a sun holiday this summer with the family? Fly to Alicante, Malaga, Faro, Lanzarote, Mallorca and Milan with Ryanair. Ireland West Airport. Don't just take off, take it easy.
Okay, the weather forecast for today, I can tell you that windy with strong southwest winds with very strong gusts at times, especially near the coast. Mostly cloudy without breaks of rain, some dry periods. Rain will clear later. Temperatures of 9 to 10 degrees. Okay, so let's continue our conversation about Letterkenny University Hospital, I suppose the hospital service in general, and we're speaking to people either running it or have had a role in running it or have worked within it to try and see, where are the problems, where can we go to try and resolve them. Dr. Peter O'Rourke's a former orthopaedic surgeon at Letterkenny University Hospital, and I'm delighted to welcome him back onto the programme. Peter, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Greg. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Right, as I say, I think it's been quite an informative and interesting conversation over the last couple of days. We heard from Paddy Rooney yesterday. We've had the view from Michael Murphy. It's not to give anyone a pass or whatever, but it's trying to really drill down into where we're at and where we need to go.
Well, I think before we can do that, we have to understand where we came from. I mean, this whole bed situation first came about in the mid-'80s when there was a general consensus in health service providers across Europe that we had more beds than we needed. And there's a gradual reduction in number of beds. Now, that was on the premise that medical treatment would stay the same as it was and the outcomes would be similar to what they were. But unfortunately, or fortunately, should I say, that changed. By the time Mary Harney was made Minister of Health in 2004, things were really in a bad state, to the degree that the Department of Health was known as Angola when she took up post, and I don't think it's changed a lot since then. She instituted the NTPF in an effort to have a short-term solution to waiting lists. I mean, at that stage, we didn't have the bed trolley crisis because people were being accommodated in facilities like day services units, but that was restricting the amount of surgery being carried out. But the severity of the problem only got worse over time as the amount of medical treatments improved and increased. And it was somewhat offset by the fact that surgery became more efficient. We had laparoscopic procedures. So instead of being in hospital for 10 days after an appendix, you were in for a day. You're having your laparoscopic cholecystectomy as a day case. Hip replacements weren't spending 2 weeks in hospital. They were spending 2 or 3 days. And so that offset the severity of the problem. And it's only now come home to roost. And the problem has been because the government, to be expedient, has used the NTPF to outsource waiting lists. And to be frank, waiting lists mean surgical patients. They don't mean anything but surgical patients, because you don't go in to a private hospital with a heart attack or with diabetes or anything like that. You go into a public hospital. So it's surgical waiting lists that have suffered.
Yeah, but the majority of people that are causing the immediate problems that we have at the moment are, maybe respiratory illness, other conditions that may not require a surgery or an intervention like you describe, okay? Should an acute hospital system not be able to accommodate these surges as well?
It would have, except for the fact that the money that should have been devoted to increasing those beds over the last 15 years went into private hospitals.
Right, okay.
People talk about the lack of beds in the country. We probably have more medical beds in the country now than we had 15 years ago, but they're private beds. The NTPF have put approximately 1.5 billion into the private healthcare sector. And it's no surprise that the likes of the Hermitage Clinic, the Beacon Clinic, the Santry Sports Clinic, the Galway Clinic, the Bon Secours group of hospitals all exist now because the government has been funding them. And they have used 1.5 billion or so of money that should have been used to build infrastructure in public hospitals to fund private hospitals. And I guarantee you, every private hospital in their financial planning, anticipates money and income from the hospital. They were all going wallop about 15 years ago. I remember Blackrock Clinic had to be refunded, and a few of the other private hospitals were being bought for literally their debts rather than their profits. But now they're all making profits, and only the other day they were offering to have an ability on a contractual basis to provide services for the government again. And unfortunately, that just means more money going into the private sector rather than the public sector.
Right. So, I mean, that's one problem that you've very, very clearly identified, or one scenario. I think you see it as a problem. So why then are we still in that position? Why has a short-term solution become the norm? Is this a lack of planning by the Department of Health or senior management at the HSE, or is there resistance to change within the HSE so that we can have maybe a different, more efficient model?
I think it's all historical. I mean, the Minister of Health doesn't run the health service. The civil servants run the health service. And even when you ask him, I believe he's on your programme a few months ago, you ask him a question, he's answering the briefing that he's being given by the civil servants. Politicians have very little influence. And it's the civil servants who actually run it. And they have their fixed ideas, and trying to change them will prove very difficult. And the easy way out from a political sense was to buy the services elsewhere. That takes the pressure off the civil servants, because it's not their problem. It becomes a problem elsewhere. But the unfortunate problem is that when you outsource things, there's a number of unintended consequences. All these private hospitals are employing all the nurses and other specialist nurses, for instance, ICU and theatre nurses, that were trained in the public sector. And that means the public sector cannot operate. For instance, the Children's Hospital can't do their cardiac cases because they don't have the staff. Why? Because the staff have been poached by private hospitals.
So when the often default position is that all our qualified staff are heading to Dubai and Australia. We're not saying that is not the case, but a lot of the problems is actual internal competition, then presumably to consultants who might ordinarily work at a hospital like Letterkenny University Hospital are saying, right, I'm leaving that basket case and I can do more work in the private sector. So we're funding perhaps maybe the main cause of competition to the public health system. We are the training ground, and then we're providing funding for their wages after the fact. It's a bit wonder anyone works in the public service then.
Yes, I agree with you totally. And this current bed crisis and the various pandemics and the situation at present is only going to feed into that. Because if you're a nurse working in a public hospital at present and things are going, absolutely mad with work, why wouldn't you take a 9-to-5 job in a private hospital where there's no pressure, there's no hassle, there's no emergencies? And why put up with the struggle in a public hospital? Because one, they can't get staff because the staff are leaving, and more staff will leave because of that. It's a vicious circle that, unfortunately, once started, it's going to be very hard to break.
And of course, I think most public hospitals don't have an ED private hospitals don't have an ED like a public hospital with. So it's another advantage in that they can seem like a very calm routine, no delays, no smell of Dettol or whatever it might be. You know what I mean? That's another feather in their bow, but it's of our making. We funded it. We've bailed them out too, to some extent, it seems you're intimating.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you hear about these VHI and other private clinics or private emergency departments, which are designed to treat simplistic cases that are in and out quickly and make money. I mean, private hospitals don't make money from someone who comes in with diabetes and spends 2 days in the hospital. They can make money from somebody coming in who has a hip replacement and is there for 3 or 4 days, or someone who has a heart operation and is there for a week, spends 4 or 5 days in intensive care and ends up leaving with a bill between 15 and 30,000. That's where the money is. They don't make money from dealing with someone with a cough.
Right, no one individual has a solution to this. But if you were part of a panel and you say, right, there's a couple of things that we need to do, and even if it's actually only short and medium term, radically, do we take over these private hospitals and utilise any capacity they have? Are there other protocols that we could invoke? I mean, what do you think that needs to be done if we treated this as an emergency the same way, for example, that we did COVID? What could work in the short to medium term?
I suppose beds are the issue at the moment. So if you can take some beds out of the private sector and put them into the public service, that will be the short-term solution. But the problem is every time you take a short-term solution and rather than taking the pain of the situation and looking to a long-term solution, you just make the situation worse. And all the solutions are coming up, like Sláinte Care is not going to resolve the situation. They have this idea that, for instance, one of the examples is private patients in public hospitals. Virtually all the private patients in public hospitals are emergencies. The only beneficiaries of removing private patients or paying patients from public hospitals will be the insurance companies, who will be laughing themselves to the bank. It does. I mean, if you live in Dublin or Limerick or Galway, you don't go into a public hospital if you have private insurance. You go into one of the very nice, comfortable private hospitals and get your single room. So the benefit of that, for instance, will be limited. And even this new contract they're talking about, there's so much money to be made in private healthcare. They're not going to get anybody who has any get up and go to work in a public hospital if they can work in a private hospital and make twice as much money.
Yeah, well, Peter, though, that this isn't quite disheartening. I'm not going to lie to you, because it's another person that I've spoken to both on air and off air that's worked within the system, that has been part of the system, and you whilst within it, you expressed your frustrations with the view of trying to shine a light and to improve things, but you don't seem very optimistic about the future, and others that I've spoken to are the same. There doesn't seem to be a pathway to a solution. It's really quite worrying.
Well, I worry about, for instance, Letterkenny. I worry about in hopefully 20 or 30 years' time, when I'm sick and aged and decrepit, there'll be someone there to look after me. But I've no confidence that that'll be the case.
So do we then need to start from the ground up then? And then realistically, that's going to take a decade, 15 years, perhaps. I don't know. Is that the light at the end of the tunnel?
Unfortunately, I think it is. And I think you have to take pain now for future gain. But the problem is people aren't willing to do that. And whatever about patients being unwilling to do that, politicians certainly are not willing to do that. You're not going to have a Minister of Health who will stand up and say that there's nothing I can do to resolve the situation. It's going to be bad for the next 10 years, but in 10 or 12 years' time, we might have a good health service. That is not something that gets you re-elected.
It isn't, but that's why maybe my somewhat naive suggestion yesterday to Paddy Rooney, I think there was cross-party input into the Sláinte Care programme for good or bad. Do we need to take politics out of such an important issue then, whereby there is a cross-party, no-party panel that are in situ to run this, that because we're doing this in election cycles. It's crazy, really, and cycles within elections as well, that enough good was clearly done in the first half of this government's term that Stephen Donnelly retained that portfolio. But as you've quite rightly pointed out, and it's evident, Stephen Donnelly is more a minister for observation than a minister for health. And I don't mean that as a criticism of him, but he's just telling us what we already know. We don't need that. We need a setup of some sort to take the politics out of this and to take the election cycles out of this then.
Unfortunately, you can't do that. The Sláinte Care group were cross-party, but everybody in there has their own axe to grind, be it from a socialist point of view, from a private practice point of view. Everybody has vested interest, and unfortunately, it is impossible to get consensus that is not laced with vested interest. Every group has a vested interest. But people would say, I as a surgeon have a vested interest. I was frustrated that I wasn't allowed to operate and I wanted to operate more. But hopefully I was able, in the various roles I had in the hospital, to see the bigger picture and see that other people needed to get what they needed, not just what I needed. But there's so many people out there who are only interested in what they want, what they need, and what that service needs.
And what we have in the midst of all this, and it's never far from my mind, but as I say, I just wanted to dig a bit deeper into this issue, is that we have people and their families, and we've all been there, going through very difficult times in the ED. I don't think it's ever pleasant, but it's obviously worsened. We've got staff that would look for any, if I were there, how long would I want to work there if I had other options? And it has to affect outcomes. And then we have elective surgeries being deferred and the impact that's going to have on people's outcomes, on top of already maybe delayed diagnosis because of COVID. It's worrying because this has a real impact on people's maintenance of their health and their longevity.
Yeah, it is true. The people will die because of the current crisis. People have always died because of medical crisis and lack of resources. But in this day and age with social media, etc., it's out there all the time. You constantly hear about it. The media is talking about it all the time. So I wonder how, is it that much worse than it was 10 or 15 years ago, or just hear more about it? But it's always been bad. There has never been a time when I personally had confidence in the service that hospitals were providing because of limitations that were put on them.
All right. As always, thank you so much for your very valuable insight, Peter. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. That's Dr. Peter O'Rourke, former orthopaedic surgeon at Letterkenny University Hospital. Just concluding that series where we, as I say, trying to drill in a little bit to the situation. It doesn't fill one with optimism, does it? Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back with your comments.
The county's #1 talk show, the 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
Every year, about 2,800 people in Ireland get bowel cancer. Bowel screening helps to reduce your risk of developing it. If you're aged 60 to 69, you can register today for a free bowel screen test kit. Once you've done the test at home, return it by free post and we'll test your sample for levels of blood. If you need any more tests, we'll let you know. Register today at hse.ie/bowel screen or free phone 1800 45 45 55 from the HSE.
New this week in Home Store and More. All floor lamps are all half price. But better hurry, because when all the half price floor lamps are gone, they're gone. Also, all home gym equipment, all 100% cotton printed duvet sets, all prestige kitchenware, and all feather and down duvets and pillows are all still half price. But when they're gone, they're definitely gone. Drop by your local Home Store and More, or visit us online at homestoreandmore.ie. Home Store and More. A happy home.
If over the holidays you decide it's time to change your car, then why not treat yourself to a new Kia in 2023? Make an inquiry on our website and we'll be in touch to arrange your purchase when we return in the new year. We have cars ready to drive away in January, so visit imotors.ie. iMotors would like to wish everyone a happy new year.
Green Shoes Big Winter Sale is now on with massive reductions. Up to 50% off across your favourite brands, including Echo, Tommy Bow, Kate Appleby, Una Healy and many more. Make big savings on big name footwear. Shop LK and one for all gift cards accepted. Green Shoes at Market Square, Letterkenny Shopping Centre and in Fulcara. Or shop online at greenshoes.com with up to 50% off in the Big Winter Sale now on.
At Ulster Bank, we have now begun to close current and deposit accounts. At this time, if your notice period and your deadline has passed, your account is now queued for closure. You must take action now. If you are still relying on your personal or business bank account and in need of support, please contact us immediately. Visit ulsterbank.ie, your local branch, or call 0818 210 260. Call costs may vary and calls from mobiles may not be free. Ulster Bank Ireland DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
On the road for Gas Networks Ireland this winter, you know all about people's energy concerns. Because there are concerns, every winter and all year round. Rest assured, your gas experts are here, keeping Ireland's energy moving and you informed.
Oh, great. Thanks for coming so quickly.
No problem. How can I help? For expert advice, go to gasnetworks.ie/experts.
If you're about to use an electrical appliance, like your washing machine, which uses a lot of energy, just ask the question, is this a good time?
Ah, yeah. It's fairly breezy out. You're good to go.
If it's windy out, it is a good time, because wind generates renewable energy, which Ireland will be relying on more and more. To find out the best times for your electricity usage, sign up to our pilot at esbnetworks.ie/pilot.
Visit Century Complex for a perfect family day out. Kids will love exploring Century Play. We have lots of tasty options available at Backstage Bar and Grill. And at Century Cinemas, we're showing kids' movies, comedies, action and adventures, dramas and more. Get in touch on 074 9121976 or visit centurycinemas.ie for more information.
Do you need a little extra help staying in your home? At Bluebird Care, we offer a wide variety of QMark-approved personalised home care services across Donegal. And our fully trained and committed staff will always meet your care needs with kindness, compassion and dignity. To get your personal home care assessment plan, visit bluebirdcare.ie or call our care team today on 07491 29562 and bring care home.
Arno's Hotel Dunfanny are celebrating 100 years in business. The birthday bash will kick off on Friday the 6th of January through to Sunday the 8th of January with loads of events and celebrations planned across the weekend. Highland Radio will be broadcasting the Jive Time Show live on Friday from 2:30 and Jimmy Stafford will bring the Saturday Shuffle live from the hotel from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday. We'll have great music, interviews and giveaways across both days. If you're in the area, come along and join us at Arno's Hotel 100th Birthday Bash.
Okay, you're very welcome back to the 9 till noon show here on Highland Radio. A caller says, why was it 5 a.m. in the morning when a relation of mine got a bed after spending hours in A&E? No one was discharged at that time of the morning. Well, listening to the manager there, the general manager, it's possible that the room had to be cleaned and prepared and no one was available to do that until that time. That would be my best guess. Home care, there's a fair few working in home help short of work and available to help out. That's certainly something that should be looked at. Why does Letterkenny University Hospital need 2 managers in the one hospital? Is this the norm? I mean, the level of employment there, 2,400 people. That's massive. That's as big as any. That's as big as an awful lot of companies that would have multiple managers. I'm not here to defend the situation, by the way, but 2,400 people, that's an awful lot of staff. Hi, my experience from the hospital is that the skill mix of nurses and doctors are very clear and simple. Care for the patient is poor. Nurses do not in some cases do rounds with doctors and no communication between nurses, doctors, patients and relatives. Simply a very broken and very serious situation now in our hospitals. Okay, a few solutions for the health service in Donegal. This is from someone who works within the sector, and we appreciate it, by the way, and you can always contact us in absolute confidence, by the way, and we appreciate when you do so, either by calling or texting the station or even contacting me directly on social media. It's a valuable insight and helps to form our coverage. But they make 3 suggestions as to what might improve the situation. Why is there no separate minor injuries unit in Donegal? This would make vast differences if there was 1 or 2 units set up in Donegal to treat minor injuries and not have to go to ED for hours and hours. That would make an awful lot of sense. It would certainly make the patient experience better. But there are minor injuries units elsewhere in the country. Have they eased pressure on EDs in the areas they are? I'm only asking, I'm not contradicting you. Their second suggestion, have a nurse or doctor triaging patients and also set up phlebotomy to take bloods ASAP so people are not waiting for hours, especially for cardiac patients who need them done urgently. Also, open up services 24 hours and employ staff at different hours to help at busy times. That one might face a challenge from certain sections of the employers, I wonder, employees. For now, Doc, set up services so that more people can be seen there. Have separate extra teams of nurses and doctors to actually treat patients and not refer them on to ED. Build up the services and community to help ease burden on hospitals. These 2 things alone would make a massive difference. And you know what? It might be interesting to contact. We might actually contact now, Doc, and see if they'll give us some figures as it relates to how many people they saw over Christmas, New Year, and what percentage of those were referred to the ED. I think that might be useful just to help us understand the whole situation. But this caller concludes, just think outside the box. Lots of things can be done to help the current situation, but it's the same thing every year. So frustrating. No positive changes being made. Bring back the Northwestern Health Board and the matrons, problem solved. I think if we dig a bit deep into history, though, there was probably an awful lot going on that we didn't know about, and we're more aware of that now. And actually, Peter O'Rourke referenced that. Happy New Year, Greg. Thank you. I was just wondering, are the private hospitals in the same state with people lying on trolleys, 18-hour waiting to be seen by a doctor overcrowding? No, clearly they're not, because they can cherry pick to some extent. They don't routinely, in the same way a public hospital does, deal with emergency patients. So they can have everything nice and calm, everything scheduled, your appointments in 2 or 3 weeks or wherever it might be. And as you heard from Peter O'Rourke, we're funding it. We've bailed them out in the past. We are training staff for the private hospitals. They're leaving the public service to work in the private service. We know that consultants have and are leaving the public service to go and work in this clearly less stressful, better hours environment. And I don't think Stephen Donnelly calling for consultants to do more is going to do a great deal to make them happier in the public service. Right, okay. We'll come back to some of that other stuff as well, because it's on different topics. So I'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more in a sec.
Can I help you, sir?
Oh, I hope so. It's Jimmy here, my budgie. He hasn't made a sound for weeks, so I thought I'd better bring him down here to the vets.
Right.
He used to be so cheerful, chirping away all day. But now, listen, nothing. Is there anything you could recommend?
Maybe try the Specsavers next door?
Lost sounds? Specsavers could help you find them. With qualified audiologists and free hearing aids with PRSI. Book a free hearing test today. Terms and conditions apply. See our website for details.
For day-to-day healthcare needs, generations have trusted the experienced staff at McGee's Chemist Letterkenny. From coughs and colds to aches and pains, from vitamin supplements to first aid essentials. McGee's have what you need when you need it, with a full prescription service available daily. McGee's Chemist, Main Street, Letterkenny. For healthcare help and advice you can always trust.
The Brussels Eye in the Sky is watching you. For more in your Farmer's Journal, here's Paul Mooney.
New satellites to inspect all farms every 5 days. Battle of the Breeds, we reveal which suckler breed secured the top weanling prices. Jail for fraudster involved in online tractor and farm machinery scam. And following recent savage dog attacks, we detail your legal rights and how to deal with a dog worrying sheep on your farm.
Only inside this week's Irish Farmer's Journal. You cannot afford to miss it.
Check out the winter sale at Michael Murphy Sports and Leisure Letterkenny with fantastic bargains on footwear. Choose from the Northwest's biggest selection of sports shoes with 20% off men's, women's and children's shoes. Get tested on the in-house gait analysis machine to find the perfect shoe for you. Don't miss the winter sale at michaelmurphysports.ie.
And just to remind you, if it suits you, you can watch the show on your TV through the YouTube app or Facebook Watch. YouTube is Highland Radio Ireland, or on Facebook it's Highland Hub or Highland Radio News and Sport. You can watch every day and see most of our guests. Mary Maguire is from Letterkenny and is literally just read the second reading from the first letter of St. Peter at Pope Benedict's funeral mass this morning in Rome. Mary, good morning to you and thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry, Mary, I beg your pardon. I had the wrong line up. Mary, this must be a wonderful honour for you to be involved in this. Can you tell us how it came about?
Yeah, I got a phone call on Monday morning from Father Kevin Gillespie, the administrator in St. Eunan's Cathedral, Letterkenny. I am presently a reader there in the cathedral, and he asked me would I be willing to go to Rome to do one of the readings at Pope Benedict's funeral. My initial reaction was no, and then he asked me to think about it, and I spoke with my family, and they encouraged me, go, this is, such an honour, and as the day went on, I just realised what an honour, what a privilege it was to be asked, and to be able to go to Rome. And today, when I was reading it, I just felt such joy in my heart. As much as it was a sad occasion, I just really felt joy and was so honoured to be there reading today on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica. It was lovely. And
part of history as well, because this is very historic, given the fact that you have a pope involved in the funeral mass of another pope. May I ask, if it's not a personal question, why was your initial reaction a no, Mary?
Because I just thought, well, why me? I just thought I wouldn't be at the standard of reading it. Not me. I can't do it. But then, as I say, when I thought about it, and today, as I didn't have nerves. I really, really was not. There's been many occasions reading in the cathedral I've been more nervous than today. I was really calm. And as I say, I did enjoy doing it. I can honestly say that. Mm-hmm. And I mean that very genuinely. I did. It was a joy, a real joy in my heart. I felt today reading.
I imagine it was very spiritual. Yeah. It was very spiritual. Was it for you? Was there? If that's the right word. It
was just a beautiful experience to be here. Really, really beautiful, and to be. It was so cold, but at the same time, I really, really felt just as a joy is the way I could describe it today. Just a joy to be here.
For those who many people may have watched it, can you set the scene? Your reading, where were you? Where is everybody else? If you understand where I'm coming from, I know it's a big picture to paint, but if you could try your best for us.
It is, yeah. Well, if anybody was watching, they saw where the altar was situated, and as you were looking at the screen, the readers and the people doing the prayers of the faithful, we were sitting to the right of the altar. We were down the steps, and we were led by an MC when it came to our turn to do the reading. There was the cardinals and all were to the left of the altar, and then all the concelebrating priests were all to the front of that, and the people then were all down through St. Peter's Square. So there were huge numbers here. Huge numbers.
And of course, a worldwide audience that we can't put a figure on. I mean, the eyes, worlds with the world of the eyes. You talked about in the past being more nervous at times reading in the cathedral. You said you weren't nervous today. Like,
no,
that doesn't make sense. So how
I
is
know,
that, Mary?
I know. I don't. It's the Grace Heavenly I got today, Greg. I can't explain it, but I really did not feel nervous today.
Brilliant.
I don't know. Heavenly was grace as I was getting. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, there's a great sense of personal pride, I would hope, Mary, but also your family, your friends, your fellow parishioners, those that know you, to have someone from our small part of the world having such, I think it's really quite an important role. It's really significant, Mary.
It was an honour, as I say, and I did my parish and my county, my diocese, and our country proud.
And you know what I think too was a great part of this? Who was it asked you again? Sorry, did you say?
Monsignor Kevin Gillespie.
Yes, I think Monsignor.
If he hadn't have asked me, I wouldn't have been here. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I think he showed it was really it is great knowledge in saying think about it. You know, rather than taking your first answer to allow you that space to make that decision. I think that's a good bit of management there, if I could phrase it like that, from the Monsignor.
Exactly. No, he's a wonderful person, so he is wonderful.
Is Monsignor Gillespie with you? Is it possible I could have a quick word with him?
He is.
Oh, thank you very much.
Me here,
Thanks, Mary, if you don't mind.
Just hold a second. Hold on.
Hello, Greg. How are you doing?
Monsignor Gillespie, a very good morning to you. We'll talk about Mary's role in this, but perhaps maybe your reflections on this morning being there for the occasion that it is. And Mary, I suppose it's trying to phrase that obviously it's a sad moment, but then there's a great ceremony there as well, and it's a celebration of someone's life too, I presume. Can you try and frame it all for us, Monsignor?
Well, I suppose it's a very historic day, of course, when you see the living, the Pope who is in office bidding farewell and burying the retired Pope. So a very, very unusual and historic day. But apart from that, the sense of a huge crowd in the square with a great sense of affection for the deceased Pope, and so there was a sense of solemnity and sobriety and sadness, but also a great sense of faith and of prayer in the square throughout the Mass. And the whole Pope's homily, Pope Francis' homily, also reflected on, I suppose, the ministry and the dedication of Benedict in the service of God. So it was a lovely experience to be present, and for myself personally, it was very moving and heartfelt to be here.
And what was the process that left it to you to have to select someone to do the reading, and then why did you invite Mary Maguire to do it?
Well, it's somewhat accidental. I worked here for some years, and part of my duties here were ceremonial duties as an MC for Pope Benedict and subsequently Pope Francis, and the office that arranges and organises the ceremonies, they needed an English-speaking reader, and they simply contacted me to ask if I might know somebody who might be a good reader and who could come with me. And there was a very short space of time to do this, and I thought of Mary and proposed it to her, and thankfully she agreed to come. So, but I was simple as that.
In my conversation with Mary, I was praising you in that you had the foresight to give her, following her initial answer, the space to reconsider.
Oh, well, yes. I mean, it's a very daunting thing. I would never force anybody into anything, but mercifully she accepted to come, and I'm very glad that she did.
Okay.
Thank God, she read so well.
Lovely. Okay. And no, she felt no nerves either.
No,
which is really amazing.
She had no nerves at all. Absolutely not. And I think she was nervous beforehand, or perhaps the day before at the rehearsal, when you see the whole apparatus of the place, in action. But then during the thing, it was. I think when you're there and you're present and you're taking part in mass, like any mass would be, I think the nerves left her very quickly. So thank God.
And perhaps she sought some assistance and it was delivered, who's to say, in supporting her through that. Monsignor Kevin Gillespie, Mary Maguire, both of you, thank you very much indeed for taking time out of this busy morning to speak to us. Take care.
You're very welcome.
Goodbye. Thank you very much, both of you, and safe journeys home.
Cutting Through the Spin. The 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
New this week in Home Store and More. All floor lamps are all half price. But better hurry, because when all the half price floor lamps are gone, they're gone. Also, all home gym equipment, all 100% cotton printed duvet sets, all prestige kitchenware, and all feather and down duvets and pillows are all still half price. But when they're gone, they're definitely gone. Drop by your local Home Store and More, or visit us online at homestoreandmore.ie. Home Store and More. A happy home.
Sheridan Security, now introducing zero-wire smart alarm systems. Zero wire, zero mess, and a real peace of mind. With a simple press of a button, your alarm can be set or unset, or download the free app and control it from your phone. Call us today on 074 912 6025 and get your alarm from €299. Stay local, stay safe, and protect what you value most with Sheridan Security Systems.
Great news! The house-proud group stock disposal sale continues today and all this weekend at the Strabane store. With so much stock still to clear, prices have been cut again on furniture for every room. The massive stock disposal sale at house-proud Abercorn Square, Strabane. Don't miss out. Sale also at Oma store.
Are you worried about trees on your property? Northwest Forestry Services Ballybuffet are fully insured and have over 40 years experience in dangerous tree removal, tree felling, surgery and stump grinding. For peace of mind, call Northwest Forest Services Ballybuffet for a no obligation quotation on 913233.
Highland Radio weather updates with Ireland West Airport. Salah, Ninnis, the Beatles. You can now fly to Liverpool 8 times a week with Ryanair this summer. Ireland West Airport. Don't just take off, take it easy.
Windy today with strong southwest winds with very strong gusts at times, especially near the coasts. Mostly clouded without breaks of rain, some dry periods. Rain will clear later to clear spells and occasional showers this evening. Afternoon highs of 9 or 10 degrees. Lots of people texting and calling in to congratulate Mary. They were watching. Well done. You did brilliant. Part of the reason for the shambles of a health service is that there is a high number of Donegal people reliant on medical cards. A whole mess. You get what you pay for. I don't see the connection there. Listen, there's absolutely no doubt that, and it's statistically proven that if there are more medical cards, then you will have more presentations, for example, at NowDoc or the GPs. That's accepted, and that's actually been widened out now. How that then translates to pressures on the acute hospital, which is where people go and are admitted if they're very, very sick. I'm not quite sure. If you could just join up the dots for me there. Greg, can you find out what's the percentage of absenteeism sick of staff in Letterkenny General Hospital? This is the most important question of all. I can tell you precisely. It's just over 10%. They have 2,400 odd staff, and around about 250 of them are sick. So there's the answer to you. It's 10%. Now, maybe dig deeper than that. How many of them are clerical versus frontline? That's a question I'm kicking myself I didn't ask. Maybe we can find that out. Right. I sat in the ED from 1 a.m. until 9 a.m. with my daughter until she got a bed in the children's ward. When we got to the ward, there were 4 beds in her room and 3 in the ward next door. Empty? Is that what you're suggesting? Hi, Greg. Give Mr. Peter O'Rourke the hospital manager's job. He knows how to sort the problems and would sort it. Some mainly highly skilled nurses have left LUH. We need to ask why. Well, the question has been answered, I think, by Peter O'Rourke, who worked within the hospital. He's answered that question. I'm not sure if that text came in before or after our piece. But yes, of course, we're losing them internationally, but also we're training them and given them experience, of course, and this is not a criticism of them. It's their working environment. And then they are going to take up much better, less stressful jobs, you could argue, in the private health service, which we are funding through the MPTF. And so it goes, and you can see how it all feeds into itself. Just had a call from a telephone number wanting to sort a Wi-Fi problem, which we don't have. Can you tell me if this is a hoax call? Yes, no one's ever going to call you. I don't need to read the number out because they clone numbers now, so it doesn't really matter. No one's ringing you to fix your computer, to fix your Wi-Fi. They certainly won't know about the internal workings of your house. They might suggest that your broadband's not working, but you know yourself if it's working or not. Try and get through. Here's the thing. Try and get through to one of the telephone companies with a fault, right? It's very difficult. They aren't ringing you up going, oh, hello, I had 2 minutes spare there. I just want to make sure everything's all right with your service. It would be great if that's the way it is, but unfortunately, it is simply not the case. So, yes, you did the right thing. Ignore that. It is a scam. Just to remind you, too, of the HSE scam, where your text to say you're a close contact, ignore that. Don't click any links in it. Also, there's another round of these messages going out purporting to be from your granddaughter or your daughter or your son saying that they've lost their phone. That's also a scam. I've lost my phone. I've got access to someone else's phone. I need you to transfer this, that, or the other. Obviously, we're going to be scared stiff and we might react without thinking. That is a scam as well. So just be cautious of that.
The county's #1 talk show, the 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
And we have another hour of it for you this Thursday morning. But now at 11 o'clock, let's get a news update. Good morning, Michaela Clark.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning. The General Manager of Letterkenny University Hospital says 10% of the hospital staff is currently off sick. Just over 60 have COVID-19 or other respiratory conditions, while around 200 staff are off with other illnesses. Speaking on the 9 till noon show earlier, Sean Murphy said a major issue at present is delays in discharging patients who are fit to leave the hospital. Well, the number of patients waiting on trolleys at hospitals across the country has fallen significantly compared to yesterday. It's now 639. Figures from the Irish Nurses and Midwives Organisation show a drop 3 days in a row. 51 people are currently waiting on a trolley at Letterkenny University Hospital this morning. Junior Minister Anne Rabbitte says she didn't feel safe after a bag of excrement was thrown at her in a public meeting last night. Bags were reportedly thrown at Minister Anne Rabbitte and Galway TD Kieran Cannon during a public meeting in Gort last night. Garda have launched an investigation into the incident. Donegal is bearing the burden of industrial wind. That's according to one of the founding members of the Guibara Conservation Group. The county is home to over 300 turbines. A public meeting is due to take place on Saturday in Litchermack Award Hall to discuss concerns over proposed wind farm developments in West Donegal. A Donegal woman who was selected to read at the funeral mass of former Pope Benedict XVI says it was an honour and a privilege to be chosen. Mary Maguire from Letterkenny was initially reluctant when contacted on Monday, but after some encouragement, she says it filled her heart with joy to be part of today's ceremony. And the delivery of the flood relief scheme in the Glen Swilly area of Letterkenny has been welcomed. Last year, the road in the vicinity of Glen Swilly National School flooded on a number of occasions, leaving some residents trapped in their homes and the road impassable. Those are the latest headlines. We'll be back with an update again at 12 noon.
All right, you can go and have a cough now.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll be back with more after the break.
On this week's Business Matters, I'll be joined by Paul Kelly, a director with Irish company Hardcore Technologies, which is providing the 3D construction printing technology for a housing development in Lancashire in England. So join me, Ciara O'Donnell, for Business Matters on Sunday evening after the 6 o'clock news. The Business Matters podcast is also available to download at highlandradio.com.
Business Matters in association with the ATU Donegal Faculty of Business. If you're looking to reinforce your leadership skills, ATU are offering Level 9 Executive Masters in Leadership and Innovation for private and public sector managers starting in January. Take the next step in your career and call 9186206 or email donald.hannigan@atu.ie.
Do you suffer from high cholesterol, menopause symptoms, digestive issues, anxiety, aches and pains, or a lack of energy? The highly trained team at The Natural Way Letterkenny can provide advice on natural remedies for a number of individual health issues. The Natural Way also has its own brand of herbal treatments to help fight fatigue, relieve digestive discomfort, maintain a healthy immune system and alleviate common menopause symptoms. The Natural Way at Letterkenny Shopping Centre, your one-stop health shop.
Hello, Hill 16 Insurance. How can I help you? Up the dubs.
Hi. I am looking for a home insurance quote.
Righto, and what part of Dublin do you live in?
I don't actually live in Dublin.
Right. Do you at least support the dubs?
What? I'm just looking for home insurance.
Well, you're going to have to keep looking, pal, because Hill 16 is Dublin only.
Get the feeling that your insurer doesn't want you? At Local Insurance, we understand your needs. Call today for a bespoke quote or find us online at localinsurance.ie. Local Insurance, we'll get you sorted. The Local Insurance Network DAC Trading's Local Insurance is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Local Insurance is a tied insurance intermediary of Acorn Brokerage Limited. Acorn Brokerage Limited, trading as Acorn Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Okay, right, you're very welcome back to the 9 till noon show. I suppose, there's really quite long waiting lists for people wishing to take a driving test. So if you're waiting a long time, you're very keen to get on the road, you need to get on the road for work or education or whatever it might be. You don't want to be failing, but unfortunately, many of you are out there. And some of it's within your control, I think. Let's tease this out with Shane O'Donoghue, editor of CompleteCar.ie. Good morning to you, Shane. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Greg.
Right, so we've had this new survey from Aviva, and it's really dug into why we're failing our tests. 23% blame nerves for not passing their test. Obviously, there are other reasons as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to be careful with the survey. It seems to have surveyed the population at large rather than people who have actually failed their test. So it is the opinion of the population rather than, asking.
Well, that's never good, is it?
No, so we do need to be careful about that.
The only thing you can do worse than that is poll opinion of journalists.
Yeah, let's leave that one there.
Right.
But it makes for interesting reading all the same. And I mean, one of the biggest causes that people think other people fail their test for is lack of preparation, actually, and lack of practice. And I suspect that's probably a very, very good point, a really good reason. It's probably harder than ever to get practice in cars because in the old days, and this wasn't a good thing, in the old days it would have been acceptable, or at least the Garda would have turned a blind eye to you borrowing your parents' car and going out for a drive, even if you were on a provisional license. Now, it was never allowed, but it definitely happened. Now, of course, there's a lot more focus on that, and it's just not as acceptable.
Yeah, but we've mandated now testing, don't we? And there's time frames, so you have to do your tests, and you can't apply for your test until I think it's 6 months after you've been issued with your learning permit, and then, as I say, you have to do these 12 lessons. So, I mean, we've never perhaps, although we don't have the casual access to vehicles like you described there anymore, although some still do it. We've never really arguably been more prepared ahead of a test, but we don't know how this compares historically either, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see the data for the time before those mandatory lessons that are now in place. And it's a great thing that they are. They are supposedly there to make people, better drivers, safer drivers from the start. So it isn't the case of you get your test and you're suddenly allowed on the motorway, or suddenly allowed to drive at night or whatever in bad conditions. So they must improve things, but the failure rates are still quite high. And it's really interesting. One of the other big causes mentioned in the survey was nerves. And I suspect that's got to be a big part of it. All tests, people are nervous in all tests of any type in life. And when you're sitting beside, which is probably a stranger in a car, and you really want your driving license, it's a nervy situation. There's probably people with driving licenses right now driving around the country that are nervous in a given situation, or in a given situation might get a fail on their test if there was an instructor next to them. So to be perfect for a test, for the whole duration of a test, with an instructor next to you, I can understand why people are nervous, for sure.
I wonder, is the system really flawed, though, in that it's a little bit sometimes like, the Leaving Cert or something, in that really what determines whether or not you are able to drive for the rest of your life, providing you're not sanctioned or what have you, is just getting it right in this moment of time. Yet we don't do driving tests, as far as I'm aware, at night. We don't do it when the weather's bad. We don't do it in snow. We don't do it in ice. We certainly don't do it on a motorway or a dual carriageway if you're living here in the northwest. Like, it's an imperfect system. Like, people might choose Donegal Town, for example, where you might not have to encounter multiple lanes of traffic as you might around Letterkenny, or do you know, that sort of a way. Like, I don't really know how effective the whole system really is.
I agree with you completely. I think we need a complete revamp of it. It's a subject that's come up a lot recently, looking at the increase in fatalities last year, for instance. And I know the government is looking for this quick fix with looking at speed limits again, but really I think we need to go much deeper than that into driver education from a younger age. And I'd be quite in favour of looking at how Austria or Germany do it, and where they have these fantastic facilities that are private facilities or publicly run facilities, but in a private land, in a safe environment, where people are taught how to drive in a variety of scenarios. And it's not just, a 30-minute course. This is a long duration. It's proper training, proper driver training.
There's another thing too. Say, for instance, if someone's starting here, I have in front of me quite a large desk, okay? But what I do is you try and train people that what you do when something goes wrong. Do you know what I mean? So in other words, if the ad brake doesn't fire, this is the button you press, those are the failures you pull, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because you can teach them when everything works. But as soon as something goes wrong, that's when there can be a problem. Yet with the test, it is just our basic general driving behaviour. How much focus is there on emergency braking or avoiding an oncoming car? Now, you could never replicate that, of course, in the test, nor would you want to. But again, and as I say, and I think that motorways thing's quite, driving around Dublin, do you know, like, you just learn enough, get your 12 tests out of the way, see if they'll sign you off 3 or 4, say nothing, and just get it right on that one day, and then we're not really doing our best to prep people, I think, for the road.
Yeah, you're right. It's too much responsibility. You're in charge of this 1-2 ton metal and plastic box that can travel at quite high speeds, and you're just let loose on the world. And I 100% agree. We're not preparing people properly for that. And the point you said there about not replicating things like emergency stops, etc., we don't want to be doing that on the public road in a
But you could in your German, Austrian example.
And they do, and not only that, they do, severe skids. When the car loses control, you come to a patch of oil on a wet day on a roundabout, that kind of thing.
Yeah, because there's nothing in the process really to teach you how you drive in frosty, icy conditions. Or in black ice. Like, maybe, and we're going to speak to someone from School of Motoring now, maybe good instructors might say, and by the way, when you're driving with ice, but I mean, really what you're doing is you're training someone to pass the test, but we don't prepare people for that. How do you brake or slow down in snow? Your driving test doesn't in no way educate you in that regard.
No, and you hit a nail on the head there. It's no point telling somebody that either. They need to have physically experienced it in some way. And I think that's where we're lacking. It's a big gap in the test, or in our driver education in general.
Stay with me, because I want to talk to you about the new penalty points. And again, we'll get to it in a second, but there's adverts running at the moment that tell you that, why waste the money on a fine when you could buy yourself a pair of shoes? The advert in and of itself highlights the fact that really you forego a pair of shoes and do whatever you like, or you don't go out for a meal. It seemed really counterintuitive to me, but anyway, I'll be very interested in your views in a moment, Shane. Frank Doherty is of the Donegal School of Motoring. He joins us now. Frank, you've been listening to some of that conversation. What's your view? Anything you want to add or contradict?
Good morning, Greg, and Happy New Year to you, your listeners, and all your staff. Well, personally, I don't have any figures there that you're quoting. I'm just talking from a personal point of view. I would think the first thing would be the lack of practice. because of insurance. Young people now, they just cannot afford to get insurance, to buy a car and all to get practicing.
And can I put a figure on that, Frank, if you don't mind? It's a 50% levy for young drivers. So there's no smoke and mirrors here. If you're a young driver, regardless of your history, there is a 50% levy. I'm not sure how many people are actually aware of that, but it's actually 48 or 49%. That's a levy straight on a young motorist.
Yes. And, they can't cope with that, really, How can they? Like, they don't have the finance to do it,
Right, so that feeds into you saying, the lack of ability to sort of get on with a qualified driver, get out and about on the road. That's a problem. What else do you see as a problem, Frank?
Well, I think it's a lot of it's geared towards cities, where they can have people, the students can have their qualified driver on, but you take people here now, we'll say we up and close to the border, Monrea up there, people travelling to Ballybofey, Letterkenny to work. They're not always going to have someone available to sit on and guide them, and take them back from work. It's nearly impossible,
Mm-hmm.
So the system in itself, I don't think is great there.
Now, you've a really high pass rate. I think it's 60% in Donegal. It's higher with you guys. How do you prep people then to control the nerves? A lot of people quote nerves as a problem.
Yes. Nerves would be a problem, surely, for a lot of people. But in saying that, in my own opinion, I think nerves alone should not fail a driving test. It's like any other exam, Greg. I would imagine you must put in the homework to get a result. Should it be a leaving cert, any type of exam, and including especially the driving test. You have to do the homework, and this is where the problem's coming in. A lot of these people are not getting a chance to do it because of financial ties with insurance and that,
Mm-hmm.
And EDT lessons. A lot of people, and it's very hard to get themselves into this, these think they go out to do their 12 EDT lessons. That's them ready. It's not. They're supposed to be practicing in between for 2 weeks every lesson, but it's very hard to get people to.
Yeah.
And then again, they have no car of their own. Their parents can't get them insured,
I think if you're very lucky, you can get a reasonably reliable car that's not too hard to tax and insure and insurance, but you would be looking at, I would say, €5,000 to €6,000. Now that would be for a 10-year-old small Mazda or Toyota or something. I mean, and that's, you would have to be paying. You would have to have that and that on the road whilst you're doing your 12 lessons. But I mean, that's an awful lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah, for young people that's probably still at college or just starting out in their working life, they really can't do it, and pay for lessons and upkeep and tax and everything,
Yeah, but then it's more of a problem too as well. Sorry to pull out the old Donegal Rural Ireland card, but we don't have perhaps the luxury of public transport that they might have in bigger cities as an alternative. I mean, if you get a job 8 kilometres away, you'd have to be really lucky if your local link ran on your route and at those times. It's essential to us to be on the road, Frank, often at this time at least anyway.
Exactly. It's really a necessity in Donegal, and around the Fun Valley area and all that. The public transport isn't there, and that's why people need this,
Yeah. All right, Frank, lovely to get your insight. Thank you.
Oh, I did just one more wee thing, Greg, too, there. I think, too, the driving testers themselves has a lot they're approaching that. Now, we are very lucky here. I would say 98% are very, very approachable, very nice to the students, But you might have 1 or 2% that actually puts them off by their attitude towards them, That's just a wee thing that, I had different students tell me, that that's really all I can say about it.
Okay, they've got a huge role to play indeed. That 98% figure you talked of, I quoted it earlier as a pass rate. It's 60% is the pass rate here. My apologies. Shane O'Donoghue, I mean, Frank's talking a lot of sense. There's often, you know what, if we speak to people in the know and then maybe try and form policy and make decisions off the basis of that, then we get to really where we should be. But we're still doing it the same old way.
Yeah, as Frank pointed out, the insurance is the cost there, and that's a really, really good point. Not really sure what we can do about that, other than the whole population subsidising the industry in that way. But I don't think.
No, we only do that we only do that to insurance companies that go bankrupt. We don't do that to try and help people.
That's a very good point.
You're not going to come down that rabbit hole with me, Shane, no? Come here. Let's get on to the doubling of certain fines for driving offences. What's your take on that? I kind of put my cards on the table, but what's your view?
Yeah, I mean, the advertising is nonsense anyway for a start, but the data, I just don't think it's the right way to go about it. We have seen in the past, in the distant past now, that when penalty points were increased and fines were increased and a big campaign was done about it, that there was some modification of behaviour. But I believe it came at the same time as an increase in enforcement. And I think we need that way more than we need any change in the existing laws as such, and existing legislation and penalty points. There, anecdotally, it feels like there's a lot less Gardaí on the roads than there's ever been. Driver behaviour, I feel, is much worse than it's ever been. People feel like they can get away with more, is the only explanation I can find. Again, this is anecdotally. There has been, actually, not just anecdotally, there has been a reduction in the number of Gardaí used on the roads in the last 2 years since the pandemic, presumably budgetary reasons. And it just feels like people are taking more chances. People feel like to get away with it.
Well, listen, there's cars all over the place with number plates that aren't legal, cars that have been modified illegally, tinted out windows. I'm not calling that out, but that's the reality. People feel they can drive around and not going to get stopped, or if they do, they'll get a slap on the wrist. If you know the location of the Go Safe vans, I mean, I can't remember last time I seen a guard out with a radar gun, for example. You know where they are. If you want to speed in between them, you probably could. I think if you've got your car taxed, insured and NCT'd, you might stumble across the occasional checkpoint, but that's few and far between. The Gardaí would say otherwise because they pop up and move around and they are detecting people. But I think there is this sense there that you probably can get away with it.
Yeah, and
so the fines are irrelevant. In other words, because if you're not going to get caught, the fine's irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly that. And hence increasing the fine, I don't think is going to change the behaviour. I'd also urge people to focus less on the speed limit, or not just the speed limit, should I say. So it's very easy, as you said, the Go Safe vans do a job. They are supposed to be in places where there are known crashes, where speed was a factor, and they do a job, but everybody knows where they are, sort of slow down in those areas, which is fine. Now, I think we need more Gardaí not doing checkpoints, not doing speed checks, but literally just driving around, patrolling, and their sole job being clamping down on bad and illegal driver behaviour, things like using mobile phones, weaving in and out of traffic, going through red lights, this kind of thing.
Yeah, because even in the Operation Slowdown, it's primarily Go Safe vans. And then they say, we clocked 1 million people and found 12 of them speeding, because we've all worked it out. Like, I actually think that day kind of exposes the fact that, we know where they are and people are very well behaved driving past them.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there was any value in that day, in that campaign whatsoever. I think it just boils down to enforcement. As we spoke about earlier, the longer term strategy should be driver education, improve driving standards for everybody. That's a much longer term project. Right now, just slapping up new speed limits or increasing the fines, increasing the penalty points, I don't think it's going to have as much of an effect as they might think. So I fully believe we need enforcement right now, much more enforcement.
We're buying more cars in Donegal this year than we did last year. Nationally, it's dropped a little bit. Does that surprise you when the figures come out? Not about the Donegal thing, but just the national. I think the market's holding up really quite well, considering.
Yeah, there was big challenges in the market last year. I mean, supply was the biggest issue, of course, everywhere.
It's the elephant in the room, because we don't really know what that means in terms of consumer sentiment, do we? Because I think certain elements of society were quite impulsive. We want it now. We're not prepared to wait till April or June. Some are. I wouldn't be.
Yeah, I think there is. The problem is, of course, that there is demand out there. We speak to buyers every day about choosing new cars, and there's far more demand than there is supply. Certainly in terms of new electric cars, some other makes and models, some makes more than others really struggled with getting any new cars last year. So actually, I feel that we would have seen a much higher increase in new car sales last year if there wasn't the supply issue.
Yeah, I made the mistake of Googling a car, and now my Facebook feed is full of car adverts. But an awful lot of different branded fully electric cars are coming out, the Polar or one or other. Like, I was really quite, brands that I'm not familiar with. Maybe they're like Tesla, they're electric only. There's a lot of new electric cars coming to market, some around 27, 28 grand as well, maybe for city drivers. There is a change of foot in that regard, isn't there? Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. We saw a significant increase in sales of electric cars last year, certainly in percentage terms, and it probably would have been higher again if supply wasn't a problem. But what we're finding talking to buyers is that brand is becoming less important, or certainly right now in this transition period where people are thinking, right, I want an electric car, what's available? So you just mentioned Polestar, that's a brand new brand for Ireland. And whereas the other one, you mentioned a car for 27,000, that's probably like the MG4. MG has been reinvented as an electric only brand and has come back to Ireland. So there's big potential there for new brands if they have supply.
That's it, because that electric car is sort of in there. It's not a dissimilar shape, but it's also in there at the sort of, a Suzuki crossover-y type price point as well. Do you know what I mean? So, I think we're going to see more of these types of cars. And hey, as long as it's got a 14-inch screen, who cares what brand it is? That's all you want.
Yeah, every new car that's being launched now seems to have a big touch screen, have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, etc. So all the technology is on board. All
right, listen, sorry I've took up so much of your time this morning. Great to have you on the show, Shane. It's the first time I've had you on. Hopefully we'll speak to you again. Good morning to you.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, that is Shane O'Donoghue, editor of CompleteCar.ie. Any views, comments, 086 60 25,000. Give us a call on 074 91 25,000.
Text 086 60 25,000.
There's no better time to switch to 48. Get all data, calls and texts for $12.99 a month. And there's no contract, so you're not tied down. Plus, we're powered by 3. Switch and save at 48.ie. Monthly membership, fair usage policy of 200 gigabytes, 5,000 calls and texts, and terms and conditions apply. One-time activation fee of $12.99. See 48.ie.
Fly with Loganair from the City of Derry Airport and save up to 15% on 900,000 seats during the big summer sale with promo code SUNNY15, including flights to London Stansted and Liverpool.
Fly with me, I want to take you there.
Book by the 9th of January at loganair.co.uk. Travel from the 26th of March. Subject to availability, exclusions apply. Loganair, for all the times.
Further lines added in McElhenney's biggest ever winter sale. Grab your bargain of the year with huge savings on fashion, footwear, homeware and much more. Explore the collection online or visit us in-store for this unmissable sale event. Don't wait around, as when these amazing offers are gone, they're gone. Hurry, the McElhenney's winter sale must end soon.
The Brussels Eye in the Sky is watching you. For more in your Farmer's Journal, here's Paul Mooney.
New satellites to inspect all farms every 5 days. Battle of the Breeds, we reveal which suckler breed secured the top weanling prices. Jail for fraudster involved in online tractor and farm machinery scam. And following recent savage dog attacks, we detail your legal rights and how to deal with a dog worrying sheep on your farm.
Only inside this week's Irish Farmer's Journal. You cannot afford to miss it.
Do you currently have vacancies that need urgently filled? Have you tried various ways to find new staff but didn't succeed? Let Highland Radio help you source and fill your current vacancies in the most cost-effective way. Simply sign up to our new job spot and we will tell our listeners about your vacancies both on air and online. Every Monday, Wednesday and Friday during our primetime shows, we will broadcast the latest job opportunities across the Northwest and into counties Derry and Tyrone. All job listings will be available online at highlandradio.com. For more information, contact the advertising team on 07491 25322 or email advertising@highlandradio.com. Highland Radio, we're here for you.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook, and at highlandradio.com.
Caller says drivers are going to go around without tax and insurance because they can get away with it. Why aren't the Garda doing more about it? Why can't the government or some private company provide a driving simulator similar to what pilots use to learn to fly? This simulator could be used to train drivers in various situations, such as driving on ice or snow, or motorway or nighttime driving. This simulator driving could be incorporated into the final test, making it a two-part examination. Would make sense. Why isn't there more emphasis on reversing in the test? I'm a lorry driver and the reversing I see is awful. Yeah. A lot of people are very reliant on cameras in their cars and beeping. And when that fails them, wallop. But I think the way cars are going now anyway, they'll probably reverse for us in the not too distant future. Illegal dumping. Let's talk to Louise about this. Louise, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, how's it going?
I am good. Right, you've noticed a spike in illegal dumping around our beautiful region, particularly over the Christmas holidays. And you provided a picture from Glenfin, just outside Ballybofey, and someone's literally just dumped their crap out onto the road for someone else to pick up. I don't understand the mindset, but unfortunately it's there. What else have you spotted, Louise?
I suppose I never thought I'd have any empathy for people who dump their rubbish on the sides of the road. But the problem in this area, at least, is that actually the private companies don't service a lot of the areas. So, for example, where I live, the last 5 months, I've been trying to sort bins for my house. I'm 5 minutes off the nearest route, but the bin companies won't come down. They've cited the roads as a reason, but our roads are fine. There's logging trucks up and down them every day. I sent them a map of 3 turning points. You know, we had a drilling company install a well, the biggest vehicle I've ever seen in my life, turned just fine. So it's about profit. If an area isn't profitable enough for the private companies to come, then they don't have to, and the council don't oblige them to do it.
Wow,
so
okay.
A lot of people in these areas, they just don't have access to bins. So the waste centre in Stirrola was closed. I don't think it opened any day over the holidays. Maybe one day. They only open a couple of days of the week anyways. And then over the holidays, of course, they were closed for all this time. So it's a really bad situation by where the council have made it really difficult for people to get rid of their waste, and they're going to have a knock-on effect of illegal dumping. It's a symptom of a bigger problem.
Do you think there should be a compulsion on private companies to collect from wherever is reasonable? And you've demonstrated, I think, that it would be reasonable to be able to collect from your property, even if they have to employ a smaller van that scoops up more difficult areas. You know, I don't think if this were a council-operated service that you would be refused to service. Do you think that's a fair enough assessment?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. You know, I first spoke with the waste department in Donegal County Council in May. So I've been trying for 6 months to get bins to the house in May, and the waste enforcement officer there tried to tell me that the council are essentially not responsible for household waste. You know, and I pushed back and said, even if you've privatised it, ultimately the responsible of waste does sit with the council. You know, we have excellent postal service in rural Donegal. We have access to electricity. We have grants for group or private water schemes.
Broadband scheme.
We've got rural broadband schemes, and you know, even though that's slow to roll out, where we are, we have excellent. Yeah. We have Starlink, and it's excellent.
Do you have Starlink? I might ask you a question about. I might ask you a question about that afterwards, actually, because I find that quite interesting. But also, to you, tell us about the proposals that you have, and you forwarded on to every single Donegal County councillor, and you say you forwarded it to them on the 16th of December. It's now the 4th of January. Maybe they are on dull holiday timeframes. I don't know. You have yet to receive a single reply for any of the sitting councillors that you emailed. Now, I want to be fair. Did you email all 37 or 38 of them, did you?
I emailed everyone that was listed on the Donegal website. Right. So there's a section on the County Council website where it says, here's your county councillors. Okay. And they've listed maybe
you got none back.
10 councillors. So I actually, when I emailed you yesterday, I also sent a second email to all of them to say, hi, here's a picture of the dumping. This is, have you gotten my email on the 16th of December? And 2 have emailed back since then. So yesterday evening, Niamh Kennedy emailed back and she said she's forwarded to the waste sector, so fine. And then Barry Sweeney. So Barry actually sits on the Environmental Special Policy Committee, and he gave me a list of the fairly weak plans that the council are implementing. Almost all of their efforts seem to be on smoking out illegal dumpers, and almost none of it on understanding why people are resorting to getting in their cars in the dead of night.
But I don't think people are comfortable with that conversation, Louise, because it's come up in the past and it's been shot down. It's been shot down as no defence. I don't think people are comfortable accepting the proposition that the reason people are dumping illegally is because either A, they don't have access to a refuse collection, or B, can't afford it. And I just don't think it's an impossible correlation. And I don't think it's what's the word I'm looking for?
Improbable.
No, it's not that word either. People just don't like to make, it's not positive. People don't like to make that connection. You're the first person I've heard make it so strongly. Do you know what I mean? And stand by it. People like to go, well, that's no excuse. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There are a portion of people who can't afford bins.
Yep.
There's those people who can't access them at all because the council privatised it and they didn't put the system to regulate it or require the areas to be covered. So people living too rural to be profitable, they just don't get waste collection. And there are probably other reasons, but the council aren't actually interested in understanding the problem. They're just trying to find the offenders, and like with the driving, they're just looking to put in fines. But a fine won't magically give a household a proper waste disposal solution if none exists. This plan to smoke out the illegal dumpers, Barry got back to me and he gave me the list. He said there are some technology apparently purchased to catch people, but they haven't put it in place for whatever reason.
That's to catch people. That doesn't, what you're talking of is a causation, and that's kind of been, right, we'll not talk about that. We'll jump straight to, well, but what do people do in that situation? I wonder, it would be worth further analysis. Is there any supports for people? Because I think it can be it be 13 to 20 quid a week to get your rubbish collected, can't it? Or every couple of weeks. I can't remember how much mine is now. But I got a recycling bin and knock that on top of it. It's not insignificant. Do you know what I mean? It's not cheap.
Yeah, their solution for helping at the top end of it is investing into education. But I'm educated and aware, and I know that burning plastic will, contribute to increased levels of illnesses like cancer and asthma in my community. And I can afford to spend, it's €4 per black bin in the recycling centre, and I can afford the fuel to drive it to 45-minute round trip every week into the recycling centre. But what if someone couldn't afford to do that? Or what if they had a large family? Putting rubbish into their car, a journey like that is just not a solution. If the council continues to make it difficult and expensive for people in rural communities to get rid of waste, these things are going to happen.
There is also a problem, though, with
if you have a waste bin at your house, you're not going to throw it on the side of the road.
Well, I don't know about that either. I agree with you, and I'm not diluting your point, right? But I got if I say, for instance, heading to Downings, going out Loch Salt, there's a stretch of road there that there's rubbish on it all of the time, takeaway rubbish. And I'm thinking to myself, why is this rubbish there all the time? So I was leaving Letterkenny, got myself a takeaway, right? And I was eating chips while driving. I don't think that's illegal. If it is, I apologise. I won't do it again. But anyway, by the time I'd finished my chips, I was right at this point where all this rubbish was being dumped. So there's people routinely getting themselves something to eat, right, and dumping it out the windows. The same is in a spot, the same distance from Donegal town. So there are people that don't care. They just finished their takeaway or whatever, roll the window down and just dump it out for some person who goes out at 6 o'clock in the morning on their own time to pick up with litter pickers and a bin bag. So there is a problem as well that's not, it's not counteracting your point, Louise, but in addition to your point of people that simply do not care.
Yeah, it's all about convenience. If that's the most convenient thing for that person to do, they're going to be driving for the day and they don't want to keep that rubbish. They balance up their morals and their level of convenience, and they do what they have to do. So someone driving that like everyday rubbish is one piece, and then the second piece is rubbish at their houses, and how convenient it is for them to get rid of that. But basically, all the focus that the council have is on just finding it, and there is a plan that they have in place. So this is actually going to roll out in the whole country, I believe, this year, where they're going to have a new system where residents and renters are asked to provide proof of waste disposal method. Now, I can't imagine that that's going to be foolproof. You know, if you're an illegal dumper, you just say, I bring my waste to my friend's house, you know, but at least they will have some sort of data if they do decide to actually try and root out.
And there's a health and safety. There's a health and safety issue here as well, because if you don't have access to a bin company, if they won't pick up or you can't afford it, and you don't have access to a vehicle, you talk in your email of being, you know, I think it's a 1 hour round trip from the local recycling centre. That's if you've got access to a vehicle. You know, there are going to be people then that are living with this waste around their property. They literally have no alternative, which. Yeah. I mean, that is obviously could be problematic to their health, waterways, water systems. You know, there's an awful lot of incentive here for the local authority maybe to look into this and to address it. And at the same time, they'd be also, I think, addressing some of your concerns.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a culture of where, you know, if it's convenient for someone to dig a hole in their land and bury rubbish, or for them to burn rubbish, that is what people do if it's convenient. Like where we've bought, we could see that there was a burn pit that we had to fix what had obviously been done for the person prior, how they were managing it. And that's what people are doing. They're finding their own little solutions of burying rubbish if the council don't provide a solution for them.
All right. Okay. Well, listen, let us know if you get any more contact back. We're going to contact the council as well. Pat wants to come in on this conversation. Pat, good morning to you.
Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Not too bad. Happy New Year to you, Pat. Right, you're listening to Louise's conversation. What's your experience?
Well, I have a gateway or a pull-in way along the N56 here, just and I'm targeted with people from delivery lorries to delivery vans, and I get a lot of takeaway stuff from that I know was being bought in Letterkenny and takeaway places, and all their chip bags and Coke cans is all dumped out at my gate.
So do you think that your distance from Letterkenny is just about the average time it takes someone to finish their takeaway?
Well, it's about 15 minutes from Letterkenny, you know, but it's just the average. They just pull in there, eat all their stuff, and dump it all out at the gate, and it blows up the road and down the road. It's on a bad corner.
The tin trays, the paper bags, the napkins, the plastic
paper bags,
forks.
yes, with names of takeaway places, you know. And I often thought there should be what would they call it? A levy put on all takeaway stuff that the council could afford to send somebody out to collect this stuff. Then,
print the number plate on the bags.
That would be a good idea.
You know, it wouldn't be long.
That'd be a very good idea.
Wouldn't be long tracking down. You wouldn't be long tracking down who's responsible.
But it's,
and what do you do, Pat?
Where everyone wants to pull in.
What do you do? You can't perpetually, eternally be going out picking up other people's rubbish.
If I see somebody sitting there, I can't just stop and say, "Well, you can't eat here."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, so you just got to drive on past.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe.
And hope he takes his stuff with him.
Or put up a dummy camera or something. Put up a dummy camera or something.
You could do that.
We're spitballing on air here, Pat. But anyway, listen, it is, and it's a pattern of behaviour, and it's been going on for ages. And as you say, there should be a levy for cleaning it up, or number plates printed on bags automatically for drive-throughs or whatever it might be. Right, Pat. Listen, thanks. I'm sorry you have to go through that, but thanks for your story. I appreciate it. Take care. Right, and a happy New Year again to you, Pat. Right, Louise. Before you go, sorry, you're in rural Ireland. You chose the satellite broadband Starlink. It's Elon Musk's initiative. It's remarkable what they're doing up in space, like trails and trails of these satellites in low orbit. That's your internet solution for you. How's that working for you, just in case any other listeners are interested in it?
Yeah, it's good. My partner and I both work from home most of the time, and it's good. You get about 250 megs every day, always. So it's not like perfect, we had a small bit of a problem with it, but for the most part, it's really, really good. And
in terms of,
we'll take the fiber when it comes in.
Of course, yeah,
it's we couldn't live where we live. We live in a really, really beautiful part of Donegal. It's really, really, really nice. But we couldn't live there if we didn't have the internet. So we're pretty happy to have it.
And you have 24 hours a day?
Yeah. We have no latency, no downtime. It's perfect. We're on video calls most of the day.
Wow.
And it's no problem. We've lived in a few different places. We lived on a boat on the Shannon during lockdown for 2 summers, and we worked remotely, and it was a little bit difficult with the broadband we had then, but the Starlink is super, super good.
And hold on a second. Stop dropping interesting bits of information just as we're ending. You lived on a boat through lockdown. What was that like?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was good. Again, it was one of those things where we just got made remote, so we just decided to do it.
Was it static, or did you tour in it?
We toured in it. We moved different places. We did Lochderg to Lochbree, although it's up further than that now. But
yeah, brilliant. All right, well done. Listen, Louise, really interesting. I don't want to take away from your initial point, which is a very, very important one. It's about access to refuse collection, and I get where I try and get to some of these recycling centres. And I know the lads and ladies in there, and they work hard, and they're great people, but sometimes it's a bit hit and misses when they're scheduled to be open. It's not the workers within them, but it can feel a bit, it doesn't, if you need to go and do something in an evening or what have you, I think maybe they could be a bit more accessible and in more locations. But Louise, listen, thanks for all your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for taking my call. I never thought I'd call in a show for something, but I really appreciate you taking the time, and I hope the council are listening and they do something,
Yeah, and really valid points and solution focused as well. Thanks, Louise. Take care of yourself. A caller says, we had a great service here in the Rosses area with the green refuse bags, which we dropped off at a designated point, but unfortunately this service has ceased. Why? Did that go away, I wonder, because of, pay by weight and all that type of stuff?
At Centra, we have great offers in our better than half price sale, like Centra Fresh Irish Pork Loin Roast 1 kilo, now only $6.69. Robinson's Fruit Chew 4-pack selected range, now $1.83 each. And Nestle Cheerios 700 gram, now $2.75. Smart choices, choose Centra. Centra, live every day.
Winter sale at Brian McCormick Sports now on, in-store and online. Kids and adults, Nike and Adidas track tops and bottoms clearing from €15. Women's fitness pants, t-shirts and shorts reduced to clear. Getting fit this year? Visit the winter sale at bmcsports.ie. Look the part, play the part. In-store and online. Click and collect on bmcsports.ie.
It's the Right Price Tiles and Wood Flooring half-price sale. Get up to 50% off all tiles. Wood flooring, bathware, cladding, everything's reduced. Tiles from only $8.99 per square yard and wood flooring from only $11.99 per square yard. Right Price Tiles and Wood Flooring half-price January sale is now on.
There's no place like a Foy & Company home. Our big January sale is now on. We're also giving away €100 Foy's vouchers every day for 12 days in January. For a chance to win, visit our social media for details. Foy's big January sale is now on at foys.ie and in store in Letterkenny and Ballbuffet. There's huge discounts off all interior paints, wallpaper, ready-made and custom-made curtains, also off cushions, rugs, household and gifts, lighting, kitchenware and much more.
Another Christmas gone, another year begun. Another opportunity to do those things you've been meaning to do for so long. Maybe doing something about your hearing loss is one of those things. At Hidden Hearing, we are the hearing experts. Our expert audiologists will assess your needs and recommend what's right for you. The results can be life-changing. Book a free hearing test today. Go to hiddenhearing.ie or call 1-800-370-000. Hidden Hearing. Your hearing is our expertise.
All right, Brooke Scullion joins us on the programme. Good morning to you, Brooke. How are you?
I'm good. How are you keeping?
It's great to have you back on the show, and we're going to have you back on the telly because you are taking part in Dancing with the Stars. It returns to our screens on Sunday, the 8th of January, with 11 new celebrity dancers. You are one of them. Why did you accept the invitation?
Good question. Genuinely, at the start, I was like, yes, of course. Glittery costumes. You're getting a theme every week. You do all the styling, and I was just more about what it's going to look like. Not even jumping to the stage rather than the actual process it takes to get there. And when I tell you, I'm in pieces. It is so difficult.
Right, we
I
know
mean,
you.
it's a challenge.
We know you can do the hair throw or whatever that might be called, and the finger click, and a bit more, of course, we saw from you. But this is all different disciplines of dance. There's a lot of learning to do. But do you have any background in it, Brooke? Obviously, you've got rhythm, but as I say, have you anything else that will tool you up for the show?
Apart from Eurovision and the choreography I received for that, I got kicked out of Irish dancing when I was 6. So no, not really any good base line to go from. Like I didn't do anything when I was younger, like dance wise. I just like sang all the time, or did maybe plays in the school, but never any dancing. Maybe a box step or something.
But also, too, this will allow you more so than what you've done in the past, I think, between the voice and the Eurovision. There is also a lot of capacity there for let people to learn a bit more about you, a bit more about your personality through expression, but also through your words, if hopefully you're in the show in consecutive weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea. It's the biggest show in Ireland. Like, it's absolutely mad, the amount of exposure that I'm getting at such a young age. And we are working so hard because nobody wants to go out and embarrass themselves. Nobody wants to, get out there and crumble on when under the lights. Like, that would be my worst nightmare. So we're working so hard, like doing 6 to 8 hour days of like intense training, and everything is precise down to your fingertips. And do you know what? The head roll is actually the thing that is throwing me off in the routine.
But that's what we've seen you do it on a massive stage. If that's the thing that's throwing you off, we're in bother. Come here, from a career perspective, though. Listen, as you say, it's Bran Burke as well, and it's great to get it out there. But I think I'm correct in saying that your first love is your music, and you've written extensively, you've released music, you've got your own, you produce an awful lot of it yourself. Did you have to decide whether or not you don't want the reputation of being a jack of all trades, I presume? And I hope that's not an offensive question to ask, Brooke, but was that a consideration in that, did your first love remains music, and did you have to consider how this progresses that? Or maybe you see yourself maybe branching out more generally into the entertainment world?
Look, it's not a bad question. It's actually interesting. I haven't even give that any negative thought. For me, it was, yes, my first love is music, my whole aspirations lie behind me being a performer. And in my head, like, another reason why I took part in the show was, okay, this will help me and capture Jennifer Lopez. The dancing as well as the singing, showing two sides to yourself when you are performing. And we're just securing gigs for this year, and I've got a new song coming out in the end of January because I worked hard before Christmas, and then now I can kind of focus on the dancing wholeheartedly. It's just a matter of judging your time wisely, and really it's maturing me a lot in terms of being an artist and being a performer.
Yeah, I noticed actually there's a couple of tracks that have been released over the last while that kind of emulate your style and delivery quite a bit. I can't think of the names off the top of my head, but I just thought that was interesting. That's as an aside. Right, okay, so we look forward to seeing you on Sunday the 8th of January. It's live, so there's no spoilers. We just hope that everything goes well for you, and you've a good long run on the show, and it's the start of a great year for you, either on our TVs or on the stage, and with the release of your music, Brooke.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And hopefully it all goes well.
I'm sure it will. Well done to you. Thanks. That's Brooke Scullion from Derry, of course. The other celebrities on it, I know Brooke. And who else do we know? Kevin Graham is a comedian. Leah Rourke was in Derry Girls. Panty Bliss is a well-known drag artist. Carl Mullen, he presents a breakfast show in the mornings. I think he's a former rugby player as well, is he? Stephanie Roach is a footballer, as we know. Damien McGinty is off an American reality TV show. Shane Byrne, rugby player. Dr. Marie Cassidy, former state pathologist. And then we've got Brooke there. Paul Brogan, an All-Ireland footballer, of course, with Dublin. And Susan Jackson, who's a blogger. So sue me. It's actually not Not that bad a lineup, I suppose. Right, okay, let's take our final break before we bid you farewell. Coming back with your comments.
The county's #1 talk show, the 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
New this week in Home Store and More. All floor lamps are all half price. But better hurry, because when all the half price floor lamps are gone, they're gone. Also, all home gym equipment, all 100% cotton printed duvet sets, all prestige kitchenware, and all feather and down duvets and pillows are all still half price. But when they're gone, they're definitely gone. Drop by your local Home Store and More, or visit us online at homestoreandmore.ie. Home Store and More. A happy home.
Sam is an expert at splitting a bill. If you didn't order a starter, you're not paying for a starter. But he's not an expert when it comes to electric cars. Should he go for mild hybrid, full hybrid? Is he ready for fully electric? All he really knows is that he wants a plug-in one. Luckily, Nissan have been giving people help and advice on electrified vehicles since we introduced the all-electric Leaf back in 2010. So, wherever you are on your journey to electric, head to your local Nissan dealer to see which electrified vehicle suits you. Plug-in or otherwise. Nissan. Innovation that excites.
The Redcastle Oceanfront Golf and Spa Hotel in County Donegal invite you to their weekend wedding showcase on Saturday 7th and Sunday 8th of January from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. View the breathtaking ocean suite set up for a wedding. Meet the wedding team, enjoy refreshments and more. Avail of superb offers for weddings booked on the day. See redcastlehoteldonegal.com.
Have you seen that Grant's Shoes Buncrana have their sale on?
Yeah, I love Grant's Shoes. They're the best for comfortable shoes, amazing service, great value, and better still, Grant's are local and family run.
Grant's Shoes Buncrana, sale now on.
Highland Radio weather updates with Ireland West Airport. Discover Edinburgh this summer with Ryanair's 3 times weekly service. Stunning architecture, endless winding streets, and an awe-inspiring castle. Ireland West Airport. Don't just take off, take it easy.
All right, let's have a look at the weather forecast for the rest of today. It hasn't changed since the last time I told you. Windy with strong southwest winds with strong gusts at times, especially near the coasts. Mostly cloudy without breaks of rain. Now, that rain will clear a little bit to leave some dry, clear spells. Occasional showers then for the evening. Temperatures of 9 or 10 degrees, the caller says. I went out over Christmas with family, so we did more driving and socialising. What horrified me most was the amount of drink driving which was happening. One evening at 7 p.m, a fella came into the bar and said, there's a checkpoint up the road, and one man at the bar said, you may give me another pint till they move on. It wasn't just that night, it was almost all of the nights. We noticed someone drink and get into their car and drive home. And unfortunately, whatever level of detection's out there, and the Garda would say it's strong, the drink and drug driving statistics would suggest that that is not out of the ordinary, and it's a worsening problem, at least as it relates to the last set of statistics from An Garda Síochána. Why not have a national slowdown day, but don't tell the public you're having it? Could catch far more people than obviously if people know it's happening, they will take it handy that day. Also to the strategy is that people are told when it's happening, they're told where the Go Safe vans are, and they're asked to alter their behaviour. It's out in the open. They've not done it secretly. It's great for Mary Maguire. One very special moment forever in the memory bank for her and her family. Good job she noticed the honour and did not miss out. A lot in life is about making good memories. It is indeed. It's about capturing them and getting them into that bottle, isn't it? I agree with you, actually. And in reality, it's really all there is. Material ownership. We judge ourselves often and you hear someone say, whether it's a property or a car or something, but really our worth shouldn't be measured in material things. It's in things like our memories and what we achieve. If Letterkenny University Hospital is stuck for staff, why am I on the panel for clerical officers since a year past last April? I'd love to start working there immediately. It's obviously a question I can't answer. Greg, if people have a medical card, it usually means they have low income and or on benefits, so not paying income tax into the system. What funds our health service? Isn't it partly income tax? That's the connection and part of the reason for the mess of a health service. Too many dodgy scammers avoiding paying income tax in Ireland. Right, okay. Again, I know I say this and it's not for me to preach, but when we are pointing fingers at each other, the people that make the decisions that actually decide our health system, that run our health system, they're sitting back laughing or saying, look at them, they're fighting amongst themselves here. That person there who's working thinks it's that person there who can't work. They think it's their fault. They don't think it's our fault. it just plays to the system. Good morning, Greg. Just trying to call the doctor's surgery, and at this time in the morning, they've reached capacity for phone calls. This is a joke. I believe that is a surgery that we get quite a lot of calls on. And they are very busy. We do know that they are very busy. I'm an old-aged pensioner and I fell. I'm in pain and living on paracetamol. I'm avoiding getting healthcare due to the state that it's in. My back is in pain. Does anyone have any tips on how to cope with a bad back? Here's a tip for you, please. Go to your GP and demand to see them, or get yourself to hospital. None of the conversations we ever have on this programme is to scare people away from the health system, to discourage people from going to the health system. Please, if you've got a bad back, and if you're an older person, you will be seen to, and you need to get an x-ray to make sure you haven't cracked something. So don't be chewing paracetamol. Get yourself up to ED, get yourself checked over, and an x-ray. Please don't be fearful of going into the system. A lot of the delays we're talking about might not affect you. You probably will be seen really quite quickly. And I never, ever want to do anything on this programme that might encourage that lovely listener there to avoid the healthcare system. Please engage with it. You'll be the better for it. That would just be the one piece of advice. In fact, I implore you to do that for us, please.